Chapter 202. The violet and azure sword Qi. The parents of these two swords were basically the yin and yang itself along with the special ingredients used to make the sword. Therefore, these two swords came to be known as the yin-yang swords. Qing Suo as the yin and Zi Ying as the yang. These two swords were an absolute pair. When the violet and azure swords came together under one, the yin and yang energies would flow together and have an absolutely terrifying power of destruction. These swords were even rumored to be able to split the heavens and sunder the earth with a power like no other. Although the violet and azure swords together were capable of splitting the heavens and earth. However, since the swords were yin and yang, they naturally fought against each other like water to fire, making it difficult for them to harmonize. If in the process of mixing the two and there was an imbalance of yin or yang, there would be chaos that would devour all. Not only would they harm the enemy, but the owner as well. In the best case, only a small amount of injuries would be gained. However, in the worst case the person would die. Long time ago, the violet and azure swords had been utilized by their owner in a massive war. In the end, the owner had failed to harmonize with the two and caused tremendous damage to both him and the swords. Ultimately, the swords had been destroyed and left behind two pieces of primal chaos. The remaining amount of yin-yang qi that had flowed in the world had formed the two to become a pair of sword spirits who hid in a spiritual vein underground to recover. This piece of information had been transmitted to his head by the violet and azure sword spirits by a mysterious method, almost as if by some sort of mental communication. At the same time, Jian Chen also knew that the violet and azure sword spirits had suffered a tremendous injury that they didn't fully recover from after failing to harmonize. At the moment, the two were tremendously weak, and before Jian Chen was a great saint master, they were utterly incapable of communicating with him. It was only when he had made that final breakthrough into the great Saint Master realm that they were able to make a strong effort to create a line of communication. Jian Chen slowly sifted through the newfound information he had been given. The two violet and azure-colored lights within his dantian had unexpectedly been two sword spirits capable of self-awareness and thought. This type of end result was something that Jian Chen found hard to believe. However, he wasn't like the average person. Despite this being something most people wouldn't believe, Jian Chen quickly calmed himself down. Jian Chen sat cross-legged on the ground with his eyes shut tight as he meditated. His inner mindscape appeared within his head and there was no longer any dizzying tremors. Even the saint weapon that was trying to break away from him had been stabilized and was levitating in a docile manner like a sheep. The only difference was that the two glows of light that had been floating in his dantian had migrated over to where his saint weapon was. Rotating and revolving slowly, the two glows of light were moving in the pattern of the yin-yang symbol peacefully. Although the violet and azure lights were still residing within Jian Chen's body, his mind was now free of worry since he had nothing unknown to fear. The lights were controllable in comparison to before when they were a topic of mystery. When he didn't know anything about them, Jian Chen had been constantly on the edge of fear, but since that was over, he could finally say he understood the mystery and could now focus on something else. At this moment, Jian Chen was incredibly relieved. This was the first time since he had become a saint that he felt so relaxed about the two lights in his dantian. Slowly opening his eyes, there was a faint smile on his lips. He raised his right hand slowly only to see a violet and azure light appear within the palm of his hand before being swallowed back into his hand. The two lights spiraled and coiled around each other like old lovers, yet they never touched. No matter how much Jian Chen moved his hand, the two glows of light never made contact. The two glows of light were the representatives of the sword spirits. At the moment, Jian Chen was able to bring out a small portion of the sword spirit's power. Although the power in his hand from the two sword spirits didn't seem very remarkable, Jian Chen could sense that these two glows had a terrifying amount of sword qi accumulated inside. It was only a small sliver of the sword spirit's true power, but it was more than enough for Jian Chen to shiver in awe. The sword qi of the sword spirits had already regained its original nature. From the outside it couldn't be sensed, but the violet and azure glows were actually formed out of pure sword qi. With the help of the sword spirits, my strength has improved once more. Even if I were to fight against an Earth Saint Master, I would be able to fight for over 300 blows with the assistance of the sword spirits. Looking at the violet and azure sword qi surrounding his hand, Jian Chen spoke to himself happily. The appearance of the sword spirit made Jian Chen happy since not only were his questions answered, but he now had a new source of strength to improve himself. Jian Chen continued to mutter happily to himself in his room before calming down after some time. Patting down his clothes, he stood up to walk out of the room. 50 meters away from the room, The entire village was all gathered around and listened carefully in case something could be heard. At the urging of Roscoe, not a single person had uttered a loud sound and began to get a little farther away to avoid Jian Chen. Jian Chen's display of strength today had completely opened the eyes of the entire village to a whole new horizon that was the Tian-Yuan continent. It was only now that they had realized how amazing a saint from the outside world was. Jian Chen may be young, but he was an idol in their eyes. Creak! At that moment, the doors to the room suddenly opened as the villagers gathered outside the room suddenly went quiet and stared at the emerging Jian Chen. Seeing the group of people around him, Jian Chen had a small smile. It had only been an hour since he had gone into the room. I'm fine now, everyone can rest assured. Seeing everyone come here because of me, this one is truly sorry and hopes that everyone understands. Jian Chen cupped his hands together in an earnest apologetic manner. The moment after Jian Chen finished talking, Roscoe immediately broke the silence from the villagers. Kid, everything is okay if you're fine. He spoke with relief. Smiling, Jian Chen said, this one thanks Uncle for his concerns. At this point I've resolved all the issues, so there is nothing to fear now. Brother Jian Chen, please forgive me for asking, but did you break through into a higher realm? The village elder asked. Next, Jian Chen was assaulted with questions by the villagers who surrounded him. With every question, Jian Chen diligently answered. Jian Chen continued to answer questions for an hour before finally being escorted away by Roscoe. Following him, Jian Chen was led back to where Roscoe's wife and 2 children were. Chapter 203. Hunting up the mountain. After experiencing such an event from earlier, everyone's attitude toward Jian Chen, in the village, completely changed. The next morning, the sun had just rose, dyeing the sky a reddish blush. In the Huang village, a chaotic mess of sounds could be heard. Jian Chen slowly opened his eyes from the seated position in his bed. That night, he had familiarized himself with the violet and azure sword qi and the identities of the sword spirits. Not only that, but he could now bring out the energies from the violet and azure sword spirits, which was their sword qi. This was a very strong source of power, but it was still unfamiliar to Jian Chen. If he didn't properly familiarize himself with it, then he wouldn't be able to freely use it at an efficient level. So Jian Chen didn't waste any time and immediately set himself to training with it. Jian Chen slowly rose from his bed and walked out of his room. Joyfully taking in the fresh morning air, Jian Chen looked back to his room. Before he had moved in, the village people had spent 2 hours to completely renovate the place for Jian Chen to live in. Outside, everyone in the village was currently in the courtyard exercising. Not too far away, Roscoe's son, Roger wielded a wood-chopping axe as he slashed continuously into empty space in front of him while shouting out in a loud voice. At that moment, Roger saw Jian Chen approach with an expression full of worship and respect. Immediately running up to him, he spoke anxiously, "Brother Jian Chen, you're so amazing. Do you think you could teach me some martial arts?" Jian Chen laughed and patted Roger on the head gently. "Roger, tell your older brother. In the future, what type of weapon do you wish to use?" "An axe, a really large axe. Just like this one." "No, an even bigger axe than this one." Roger raised the wood-chopping axe into the air with an enthusiastic expression. "Roger, just because a weapon is large doesn't mean it'll be stronger. The larger a weapon is, the harder it is to control. When you become a saint, you cannot be sloppy when you condense your saint weapon. You must control the saint force within your body to form a saint weapon to a size that you are comfortable with. Understand?" Jian Chen's face was exceptionally serious. This question was very important since it could impact a person's life and his entire fighting strength. "And Roger understands now." He chirped with an obedient nod of his head. "Roger, your brother here isn't proficient with an axe, so I cannot teach much. But brother can still teach you a basic amount of the foundations." After that, Jian Chen explained a few basic principles of cultivation regarding martial arts. These topics were very important to Roger as well as being very practical. After all, if a person wanted to have achievements in the future, not only did one need talent, but they also needed a mastery of the foundation. That foundation was utterly indispensable. If one were to carelessly increase his strength in a sloppy manner, that manner would severely damage both their foundation and their fighting strength. In Jian Chen's past world, he had fought against many axe wielders, so he had a rough understanding of how it worked. However, teaching Roger these things at this moment was far too early. Jian Chen continued to teach Roger for an hour before finishing the training session. After that, Roscoe and a few weapon-wielding men walked up to him from some distance away. Arriving at Jian Chen's side, Roscoe laughed. "Kid, what brings you up so early in the morning?" "Haha, you've been here for a month, but this is the first time I've seen you up so early." Jian Chen returned his laugh and looked at the men holding weapons behind Roscoe. "Uncle, from the looks of things, you're going up the mountain to hunt?" Roscoe nodded his head and replied, "Correct. The meat we had in the village is all but gone, so we need to go hunting once more." "Haha, if Jian Chen has some free time, why don't you come with us to go hunting for some wild beasts? You're quite amazing, so with you, our harvest will definitely be bountiful." A middle-aged man right next to Roscoe laughed with kind eyes. He stared at Jian Chen. Jian Chen nodded his head. "I found myself with some spare time, so I might as well go with everyone to learn how to hunt some wild beasts." After a month of residing within Huang village, Jian Chen hadn't helped the village in any way. Now that he was completely healed and had some ideas of leaving, he wanted to help out the village first to repay for the kindness they had shown him. After hearing Jian Chen's response, all of the men ready to go hunting had happy expressions on their faces. Each one of them had personally witnessed Jian Chen's strength. They knew that he was strong beyond belief, so right now, everyone thought that this trip would be an exceptionally rich harvest. Afterward, Jian Chen followed the group to the mountains. Although these mountains were very far from the magical beast mountain range near Wake City, they were not small in size. The mountains were filled with tall grass and had wild beasts roaming about occasionally. Though, Class 1 magical beasts were rare to come by. There were 7 people in total, aside from Jian Chen. There was only one other person that had a fully condensed saint weapon. The other 5 and Roscoe just carried iron weapons. The deeper parts of the mountains contain a large amount of wild beasts. One of the men spoke while they traveled on the road. He was the only other man who was a saint, named Kratos. Unfortunately, his cultivation was rather mediocre and he had no source of monster cores to supplement his cultivation. Not only that, but he was not diligent in his cultivation, so even though he was around 50 years old, he was only at the level of a saint. For the moment, the group continued to walk slowly while carefully paying attention to their surroundings just in case a wild beast were to make its presence known. The beasts appeared at random and were dangerous enough to this group that they could harm to some of its members. Jian Chen followed the group silently. His eyes occasionally swept around them and his ears trembled with the sounds of activity. Everyone carefully traveled forward for some time before Jian Chen's face suddenly gained a smile. Bending down to pick up a stone, he shot it to the side with the speed of a bullet. Suddenly, a sound could be heard 20 meters off in the tall grass to the side. With the sudden movement, Roscoe and the others grew even more anxious and clenched their weapons in preparation to fight. Seeing the nervous expression on their faces, Jian Chen couldn't help but continue to smile. Waving his hand, he spoke. "No need to be worried, just come with me." The group of men followed Jian Chen through the patch of tall grass only to see a 2-meter-long body on the ground with blood pouring from its head. "Tease. This is a tiger." Upon seeing the wild beast, everyone aside from Jian Chen and Roscoe cried out in shock. A tiger-class wild beast was undoubtedly one of the more dangerous wild beasts. Their attacks were vicious and their movements quick. Even if the 6 of them were to combine their strength, it would take an intense battle to kill a tiger, and even then, there would be no guarantee that they would have no injuries. However, Jian Chen had just killed a tiger they had thought to be extremely dangerous with ease. In their hearts, they couldn't help but look at Jian Chen with extreme respect as well as a deep amount of envy. AI. Seeing the black tiger on the ground, Roscoe let out a deep breath of air. His face had a complex look as he looked at the wound on the tiger's head. In the past, he could easily kill a Class 1 magical beast with just a wave of his hand. But now, after his saint weapon had been destroyed, he was left with a physique that was marginally better than a regular person. So even hunting for wild beasts required him to form a group. Taking note of the change in Roscoe's face, Jian Chen knew what was going through Roscoe's mind. Mentally sighing, he could understand Roscoe's feelings, but he didn't have any words that could pacify his thoughts. "Everyone bring this wild beast out and let's continue onward." Jian Chen spoke aloud. Okay, following the path, everyone traveled through the mountain while hunting for wild beasts to kill. With a great saint master like Jian Chen leading the group, their harvest had become exceptionally rich. In half a day, they were fully loaded. Each one of them had a spare space belt from Jian Chen that contained the corpse of a wild beast of every type. It could even be said that the amount of wild beasts within these space belts could feed the village for half a year. Right now, Jian Chen had already led the group from the front for a long time. Suddenly, Jian Chen stopped right in front of a patch of grass. 2 meters right in front of Jian Chen was a single blood-soaked man that lay on the ground unconscious with various wounds adorning his body. Jian Chen's eyes went wide as he quickly arrived to the side of the body. His right hand hovered right next to the man's nose while his left hand was placed over the heart. There's a pulse and airflow, he's alive. Jian Chen's eyes lit up as he tried to save him. After that, the group of men following Jian Chen appeared from the tall grass and saw the unconscious man with shock. Seeing the group, he hesitated for a small moment before taking the man into his arms. He's still alive, but he's almost on his last breath. It'd be for the best if we return now. Right, saving a man's life is especially important. We'll head back right away. At the Huang village, Jian Chen and the group of hunters rescuing a man swiftly made news around the village, attracting the interest of many people. This time, everyone was trying to guess whether or not this man they rescued would be like Jian Chen and be a high-leveled expert. Within the small room of Jian Chen, 20 people were gathered around and talked among themselves. Within the room, the man Jian Chen rescued lay on his bed with a small glow of white light surrounding him. Right now, Jian Chen was using the Light Saint Force to heal his wounds. The chances of his ability to use the Light Saint Force like a Radiant Saint Master being exposed were a lot lower since it was daytime. Chapter 204. Ming Dong highlight above. Although the man Jian Chen had rescued wasn't dead, he was still on the verge of dying. This small mountainside village wasn't able to find any sort of high-quality medicine to help treat the man's wounds, so Jian Chen could only rely on the Light Saint Force to save his life. Under the treatment of the Light Saint Force, Jian Chen was able to force the man away from the beckoning of Yan Luo Wang. Just as his health stabilized, Jian Chen stopped using the Light Saint Force since he had no desire to reveal that he could utilize the Light Saint Force. That also meant the man's wounds would not be healed in a single motion. Standing in front of the bed, Jian Chen looked over the man only to see the blue robes he was wearing. From his appearance, the man looked to be around 28 years old and was quite handsome. Suddenly, the youth's eyes began to blink open as the pupils inside searched all around. Finally, his eyes landed upon Jian Chen with a confused look before realizing that he was safe. "Are you the one who saved me?" he asked Jian Chen weakly. Nodding his head, Jian Chen replied, "That's right, it was me. Many thanks for saving me. This one is truly grateful and will return the favor." The youth then responded. Jian Chen gave a small smile before saying, "For now, don't say anything, let alone repaying me. I too was saved by someone, so like you, we are quite similar." The youth had a mild smile on his face as he heard those words. "This one is called Ming Dong. Might I know how to call my benefactor?" Jian Chen sat on a stool near the window and replied, "You can call me Jian Chen, no need to call me benefactor. Your wounds are still very severe. If it weren't for me bringing you down the mountain and using some medicine, you would have woken up at the Yellow Springs in half a day." Ming Dong's eyes gained a sudden spark of intense hatred as he bit his lips and spat. "These wounds of mine, sooner or later I will pay them back." Still sitting down on the stool, Jian Chen's eyes had a spark of interest as he looked at Ming Dong. Pointing a finger at the various wounds, he asked, "These wounds, were they from your hated enemy?" "No," Ming Dong shook his head. "I originally discovered an injured Class 4 magical beast that was already on the verge of death. After a huge amount of effort on my part, I was able to kill and extract the monster core, but a group of mercenaries found and robbed me. If it was just a single mercenary I wouldn't be afraid, but it was a large group of them. Combined with my wounds, it was enough for them to take my space belt. In a final effort, I ran away with all my strength, otherwise I would not have lived." Jian Chen could only sigh to himself when he heard about Ming Dong's plight. These type of occurrences were common within the Tianyuan continent since the world was one where the strong fed off the weak. Strength was vital here, and if you didn't have the strength, then living on the Tianyuan continent would be exceptionally difficult. Even if one tried to live a low-profile life by not offending anyone, one would not be guaranteed a safe life. Danger could drop down from the skies at any given time, so no one would be able to constantly avoid it. After that, the two began to chat for a while to get to an understanding of each other. Ming Dong was a child from a rural village. He had a decent talent at cultivation and was hardworking as well. At the age of 28, he had already reached the level of a middle Saint Master. This type of cultivation speed was ranked among one of the top within the continent. Because of his habit of living alone, he had never wanted to travel with anyone else. Even after becoming a mercenary, he didn't join any mercenary groups and instead obtained personal freedom. These past few years, Ming Dong would accomplish a few mercenary missions that involved killing a few low-leveled magical beasts for their monster cores. Aside from selling a few for money, he used the rest to help him cultivate, making his cultivation speed faster than those around his age. After finding out about that, Jian Chen gained a new level of respect for Ming Dong. It went without saying that the two most important things that make one strong are to be hardworking and to hunt and kill magical beasts by yourself. Jian Chen was certain in his heart that Ming Dong would be destined for many achievements if he continued to cultivate those traits. After all, for a 28-year-old to reach the level of a middle Saint Master was almost unheard of. What was even more surprising was he had accomplished this by himself. Only the children of those who were born in a wealthy clan or had some sort of treasure would be able to reach such a level so fast. Staring with a complicated look at the pale-faced Ming Dong, Jian Chen hesitated for a moment before finally saying, "Ming Dong, I don't know if you're willing to join my mercenary group. After experiencing these things, I'm sure you can realize how beneficial joining a mercenary group can be." Ming Dong hesitated for a moment. He was already accustomed to the solo lifestyle and honestly wasn't willing to join a mercenary group and be restricted by it. The truth of the matter was, with his strength, he could have joined any strong mercenary group a long time ago if he wanted to. Sitting on the bed, Ming Dong had thought about how his life had been saved by Jian Chen and so, despite his personal convictions, he decided, if Brother Jian Chen won't mind, then I, Ming Dong, will join your mercenary group. Jian Chen had a happy smile on his face as he laughed. Good, Ming Dong, with you entering the group our strength has gone up. Given some time, I will definitely make our mercenary group the #1 group within the Tian Yuan continent. As he spoke, Jian Chen couldn't help but think back to the words Uncle Kendall had once said. My biggest wish is for my flame mercenaries to become the strongest group within the Tian Yuan continent. Jian Chen had now took on Kendall's wish for his own. He would replace Uncle Kendall and make the flame mercenaries the strongest in the continent. Ah, that's right. I don't even know what the group is called, how many people there are, how strong it is, or who the captain is. Ming Dong stated. Jian Chen smiled. The mercenary group is called the Flame Mercenaries. As of right now, I am the only member, but with you, that makes 2. As far as strength goes, I am currently at the primary Great Saint Master level. What, just us 2? Astonished, Ming Dong looked at Jian Chen with disbelief, realizing how young Jian Chen was before continuing with a dumbstruck voice. Wait. You say you have the strength of a primary Great Saint Master? Are you sure you're not joking? Chapter 205. Leaving Huang Village with the addition of Ming Dong, Jian Chen could no longer be considered the newest addition of the Flame Mercenaries. In the past, his strength had been insufficient, but now that he was a Great Saint Master and had the assistance of the Violet and Azure Sword spirits, even if he were to run across an Earth Saint Master, he would be able to fight them. So slowly, he was building up the strength of the Flame Mercenaries. Next, Jian Chen stayed at the Huang Village for another 2 days. In those days, he went around saying his goodbyes and prepared to leave the village. In the wooden house, Ming Dong continued to recover his strength. He looked at Jian Chen, who was leaning against the wall. Jian Chen, when I'm fully healed, I will leave Huang Village, and if you have not returned, I will look for you. Jian Chen muttered to him, I've used up all the herbs in my possession, so all that's left is for you to slowly heal. By my estimation, you'll fully recover in a month. For now, I'll be leaving to take care of a few personal matters. I'll be back in a month, so for now, just rest up. Taking out a space belt and 8 Class 4 monster core along with a few purple coins. If you heal up and I'm not back yet, then cultivate with these. With your talent and these Class 4 monster cores, your strength will shoot up quickly. If I don't come back for a long time, feel free to leave by yourself. Seeing Jian Chen hold out those 8 Class 4 monster cores, Ming Dong's face became startled. Class 4 monster cores were very costly, and so he had never used one. Just thinking about how he had almost lost his life over a Class 4 monster core had traumatized him a bit. So when Jian Chen had brought out so many Class 4 monster cores for him to cultivate with, he felt that he couldn't comprehend such generosity. Taking a deep breath and calming the raging emotions in his heart, His hand shook as it reached out to grab the items offered to him. With a complex look he said, "Words of thanks won't suffice here, but in short, I, Ming Dong, will remember your kindness." Ming Dong was a person who remembered his dues. Jian Chen had saved his life and then gifted him so many precious items, so in Ming Dong's heart, he had resolved to follow Jian Chen with determination. He knew that were it not for Jian Chen, he would not have been able to see the afternoon sun ever again. Plus, Jian Chen was already a great saint master at such a young age. That spoke plenty about his cultivation talent. To follow such a person would be no loss at all. After planning things out with Ming Dong, Jian Chen didn't stay in Huang Village and immediately left the village he had stayed in for the past few months. Huang Village was very far from any other place and had mountains surrounding it, meaning there were very few people about. Following the instructions of Roscoe and the village elder, he headed out in a certain direction out of the mountain ranges. As time went on, Jian Chen had come across a multitude of villages like Huang Village. In these mountains, there were plenty of them. While walking, Jian Chen committed the path back to Huang Village to memory. He didn't want the path to be lost to him, since he wanted to meet back with Ming Dong after he finished with his personal matters. To find such a small village within the continent would be extremely difficult. So in the case that he would forget the path, he tried his best to remember every detail. There weren't any wild beasts in the mountain range, and magical beasts were rare as well. With that, Jian Chen could stroll through the mountain ranges for a day without seeing more than 2 Class 1 magical beasts. This mountain range was exceptionally large, and Jian Chen didn't know if he was still within the Blue Wind Kingdom after falling off the cliff and into the river. Jian Chen continued to walk until the sky grew dark where he stopped by an open plain. In the night, the cliff of a nearby mountain hung overhead while the moon's light scattered down and illuminated the area. Walking just a little farther, he met a group of mercenaries within the cover of the night. There was an encampment of 20 tents with a small campfire lighting up the sky in the middle of it. Slowly walking toward the group of mercenaries until he was within 100 meters of them, Jian Chen didn't bother to conceal his footsteps, so the sounds of his walking and the rustling of the grass had instantly alerted the mercenaries. "Who's there?" A voice called out loudly and woke the sleeping mercenaries. Immediately, the previously calm campground went into an uproar as a large group of men came charging out and surrounded Jian Chen. Because the moonlight was right behind Jian Chen, they could only make out his figure, but upon seeing only a single person, everyone's face loosened up a bit. "Who are you? State your name." A mercenary called out to Jian Chen. Jian Chen stopped just 20 meters away from the group of mercenaries that surrounded him. "This one is only a mere traveler who has lost his way. Perhaps you could spare a map?" The mercenaries all looked at him with a strange face of surprise before another mercenary spoke to him. "Where are you coming from and where are you heading to?" Jian Chen hesitated for a moment before replying. "Before I ask my question, could you possibly tell me, is this still the Blue Wind Kingdom?" The group of mercenaries were now looking at Jian Chen with an absolute look of shock. "Correct, this is the Blue Wind Kingdom," a built mercenary responded. Upon hearing that he was still in the Blue Wind Kingdom, Jian Chen had a look of excitement on his face. "That's good. This one, looking for the Class 3 Wake City. If anyone here has the directions, this one will be very grateful." "What, you're going to Wake City?" a person asked in surprise. Like the others, he was staring at Jian Chen with a strange look. Seeing the expression on everyone's face, Jian Chen was suspicious. "Is there a problem?" "There's no problem, haha. As it is, we're heading to Wake City as well. We didn't think that we'd meet someone else headed in the same direction." A person laughed. "Since all of us are heading to Wake City, you should come with us. There's still a decent ways until Wake City, and the road is still dangerous. One more person is one more person to rely on after all." The sturdy-looking man laughed with a friendly expression. "The captain's right. There's still a long road until we reach Wake City. If you go by yourself, it'll be quite dangerous, so it's best to go with us." A 40-year-old man spoke to Jian Chen. Jian Chen hesitated for a small moment before nodding his head. "That's fine then. If everyone doesn't mind, then I'll share the road with you. It's quite fortunate that I've met you. I'm not familiar with these roads, so I would have been lost." Chapter 206. Loyal Spirit Mercenaries. After that, Jian Chen continued to travel with the mercenary group and chatted with them. Jian Chen and the group of mercenaries subconsciously grew closer together while at the same time Jian Chen had learned a thing or two about the group. This group of mercenaries was called the Loyal Spirit Mercenaries, and it had around 80 members. Aside from the captain that had peak Saint Master strength and 5 others that were Saint Master experts, everyone else ranged from Saint to Great Saint. As the night came, Jian Chen and the Loyal Spirit Mercenaries would often talk for a while before retiring. But Jian Chen would always take out his tent from his space belt and then 2 monster cores in order to spend the rest of the night cultivating. As usual, the energy within the monster cores was absorbed into Jian Chen's body at an alarming rate. However, the only difference this time was that the moment it entered Jian Chen's body, it automatically rushed toward the violet and azure sword spirits within his dantian without a single speck going toward Jian Chen's own body for refinement. Right now both sword spirits were especially weak. Their strength wasn't anywhere close to its peak, so Jian Chen didn't rush trying to improve his own strength. Instead, he chose to pass all of the energy he absorbed to the violet and azure sword spirits in order to help them recover. Since he could borrow the power of the sword spirits, he wanted to strengthen their power first so that the power he could use would be even stronger. Now that Jian Chen was a great Saint Master, he wasn't in such a frantic rush to improve his strength again. Although the berserk elements within the monster core's energy were quickly absorbed by the sword spirits, just randomly cultivating would only lead to a shaky foundation and affect his strength. The violet and azure sword spirits had taken the energy at a fast rate, even faster than Jian Chen's original absorption rate. A single class 4 monster core would be completely assimilated into the sword spirits in 2 hours. Taking in a deep breath, Jian Chen was surprised by just how fast the sword spirits were absorbing the energy from within the monster cores. He didn't know just how much it would take for the sword spirits to recover, but the speed they were taking the energy had triumphed over his. With a class 4 monster core completely gone within 2 hours, Jian Chen could only be shocked at this speed. After all, a class 4 monster core was not like a class 3 monster core. If it took 2 hours to fully absorb a class 3 monster core, then Jian Chen would take the results begrudgingly. But for a class 4 monster core, Jian Chen couldn't afford to have that kind of result. Despite the fact that he could kill a class 4 magical beast without a problem, they weren't as abundant in numbers as class 3 or class 2 magical beast. AI. It takes 2 hours to absorb a class 4 monster core, and with 24 hours in a day, that means 12 class 4 monster cores could be fully absorbed. What an extravagant waste. Jian Chen sighed as he furrowed his eyebrows together. The night was very peaceful in the campground, but occasionally there was an odd sound. By morning, the sun dyed the lands a bright red as the Loyal Spirit Mercenaries packed up their tents while chattering. Soon afterward, the campfire came to life with a crackling sound. In his tent, Jian Chen slowly opened his eyes and shook himself sober from his cultivational meditation. Walking out of his tent, Jian Chen's eyes swept around. Seeing only 40 men moving about and lighting campfires while packing up the tents, he noticed a few were already mounting the horses in preparation to move out. From some other tents, a few men slowly crawled out in a hazy stupor. A few of them were yawning continuously, a symbol of their lack of good sleep. Slowly shaking his head, Jian Chen began to pack up his tent. "Hey Jian Chen! Did you get a good night's sleep?" Suddenly, a deep voice called out to him from behind. At the voice, Jian Chen turned his head behind only to see a sturdy-looking man coming toward him. This man was someone Jian Chen recognized. He was the leader of the Loyal Spirit Mercenaries, Hudolph. "Ah, quite well, yes." Jian Chen responded with a laugh, though last night, he hadn't slept a wink. To be accurate, Jian Chen hadn't ever slept frequently since he was young. The moment he had become a saint, he started to sleep less and less and generally spent the nights cultivating. Sleep was nothing more than a waste of daylight. Although sleep was necessary to recover, when a person sleeps, their head becomes blank. Within this world of spirits and dreams, a person wouldn't be able to sense the passage of time, but the common man would waste this time by sleeping. A cultivator could enter a state of meditation and recover his spirit there. Through this method, not only would the spirit recover, but it would also improve faster than sleep would. Sleep was merely a way to recover spirit. The stronger experts of the world would be able to go day and night without sleeping. After an early breakfast, the Loyal Spirit Mercenaries immediately set off for the road. Jian Chen didn't have a mount to ride on, but instead rode within a crowded caravan on the way toward Wake City. In a flash, Jian Chen had traveled with the Loyal Spirit Mercenaries for an entire day. In that time, Jian Chen had idly chatted and deepened his friendship with them all. At this moment, Jian Chen sat within the crowded caravan with his eyes shut before slowly opening them. Staring outward with a cold glare, he spoke out. Be careful everyone, there's movement up front. It should be a magical beast. Hearing Jian Chen's warning, the group paused as each one of them stared up ahead. However, no matter how much they strained their eyes, they could only see an empty plain in front of them with no strange object. Jian Chen, you're too sensitive. Everything's normal with nothing moving at all. A mercenary called back with a grumble. Yeah, Jian Chen, this type of talk shouldn't be said so casually. If you can't make sure of this in the future, then it's best to not joke about it. Hudolph reprimanded. Suddenly, just as Hudolph finished speaking, the land around them began to shake. Captain, there's actually movement. Pay attention to the ground. A mercenary cried out the moment he realized the ground was shaking. The earth is shaking. Could a group of mercenaries on mounts be passing by? Are we being attacked by a group of magical beasts? As they spoke, each one of the loyal spirit mercenaries began to pay attention to the shaking of the ground with serious expressions on their faces. Everyone prepare yourself for an attack. Hudolph cried out without hesitation toward his group of mercenaries. Each one of the loyal spirit mercenaries suddenly sprung into motion as they brought out their saint weapons. They arranged themselves into a serious battle formation as if ready to fight a war. Chapter 207. Conflict with a giant beast. As the tremors in the ground became more apparent, everyone grew more and more serious as they tried to find out what exactly was causing the tremors. All the loyal spirit mercenaries clenched their weapons as they stared ahead. They heard many sounds coming from in front of them, but they still couldn't see anything. Each one of the mercenaries knew that if what Jian Chen had said about a single magical beast was true, then this one was indeed a strong magical beast. Everyone be careful. If we can't fight, then prepare to scatter. Hudolph barked in a serious tone. Just then, a man with an expensive robe and a weak-looking face came up from behind and moved next to Hudolph. Captain Hudolph, what's happening? I just heard something about a magical beast heading our way. Is that true? Sire Hari, you should move back for now. We're not sure if it's safe yet, but based on the movements in front of us, it's either a group of mercenaries on mounts, or a large amount of magical beasts. And it's not just one magical beast. Hudolph's voice was calm, but his expression was extremely serious. Can the goods be saved? The weak-looking man asked. That's difficult to say. Hudolph shook his head. Sire Hari, you should prepare to run for now. In the case that there's a large group of travelers, then it won't be that bad. But if it's a single magical beast, then Sire Hari, you should know the result. Ai! Hearing Hudolph's words, the man could only sigh heavily. Those goods were his, and the loyal spirit mercenaries was the group he had hired to protect him until Wake City approached. If the goods they were transporting were lost, then he would not be able to make up for the deficit, since this entire inventory of goods had been completely bought using the man's savings. Jian Chen sat cross-legged within the caravan with his eyes concentrated in the direction ahead. However, compared to the others, he was much calmer. There wasn't a single trace of panic to be seen in his eyes. At this moment, a small dust cloud could be seen from beyond the horizon. The dust cloud wasn't moving too fast, but as the dust cloud moved up and down, the mercenary group could feel the tremors in the ground get stronger. These shakes continued to spread further and further within a large perimeter of several kilometers. By this point, everyone could finally see that the reason behind the dust cloud and tremors was indeed a magical beast. Everyone's faces grew whiter by a few shades. If it was a group of people that was causing the shakes, then they would have been able to make way for the group to pass, or even give some money for a safe passage. But with a magical beast, there weren't any other options aside from fight or flight. The large magical beast right in front of them appeared to be a large gorilla that was 10 meters in height with brown fur. It stood up on 2 legs like a human, and walked similarly to a human as well. Step by step, it bounded towards them. That's a war beast. Seeing the large humanoid magical beast, Hudolph's face became priceless, and the furrow of his brows loosened significantly as well. A war beast, as the name implied, existed to fight. Not only were their physical defenses terrifyingly strong, but their strength was unparalleled and could overthrow city walls. These types of magical beasts were known as the children of the earth, the pets of Mother Earth, or natural controllers of the earth. A single footstep of these war beasts could cause tremors within 100 kilometers. If it was a strong war beast or a group of them, then they could bring down a Class 1 city's walls with their footsteps from a distance of 10 kilometers away. Despite this, a warbeast's single target attack was pathetically weak, and they had an even greater weakness in speed. There weren't many warbeasts within the Tianyuan continent, but they weren't extremely rare either. Practically every country had a few warbeasts under their command. Captain, that's a warbeast. Its defense is strong, but its offense is relatively weak. What should we do? Should we fight it and force it away? A loyal spirit mercenary asked. No wonder there was such a strong tremor. It was a war beast. Since it's a war beast, this will be easier to deal with. Hudolf laughed. Brothers, a war beast isn't much of a threat to us. Let's drive it back. All right. Immediately, a group of mercenaries jumped down from their mounts and dashed toward the large war beast. Jian Chen sat in the caravan as he estimated that there were probably only 500 meters separating them and the war beast. His mind raced as he tried to think of any good information on war beasts. A war beast's strength is determined by its size. A war beast that has reached Class 6 level will be around 100 meters tall. A Class 5 war beast will be around 50 meters, and a Class 3 war beast would be less than 10 meters tall. Judging from this war beast, it's a little over 10 meters, making it a Class 4 war beast. Jian Chen muttered. A war beast's defenses are exceptionally strong. Even a magical crystal cannon would be unable to do damage to it. The stronger it is, the more terrifying its defenses are. It would be incredibly hard to kill one. Even the Dragon Clan during the peak of the magical beast era was said to have been unable to match with the war beast's defenses. I'm not sure if I can penetrate through its defenses with my current strength. Ho! Seeing a group of mercenaries charge toward it like a group of small ants, the war beast let out a roar before stomping heavily on the ground. Bang! As an oppressive roar rang out, the ground around the war beast began to fiercely shake. A series of web-like cracks ran through the ground in all directions. Soon, the area within the large perimeter was covered in cracks. The violent shaking of the ground had caused the caravans to sway violently. The force was so great that even Jian Chen wasn't able to control himself, and fell to the ground. Creak! The caravans began to creak with a painful sound as the various commodities tumbled to the ground. Not too long after, dozens of caravans all collapsed. This kind of earthquake didn't affect the loyal spirit mercenaries at all. The group quickly arrived at the warbeast's feet and resolutely hacked at the warbeast's body with their saint force-filled saint weapons. However, they didn't damage the giant warbeast at all. Even its fur had remained completely uncut. Ho! The large warbeast snarled angrily. It lifted one of its large legs into the air before firmly slamming it down towards a mercenary's head. That mercenary lazily rolled away and dodged the warbeast's foot. When the warbeast strongly slammed its foot into the ground with a seeming endless amount of force, the entire area shook violently once more. But what amazed everyone was the fact that when the warbeast lifted its leg, there was not a single trace of a crater to be seen from the blow. Chapter 208. Tee-hee Fearful Violet and Azure Sword Chi. The defenses of a warbeast are quite strong. Everyone put more strength into your attacks. Combine them. Hudolf cried out as his saint weapon materialized in his right hand. With an explosive shout, a large amount of saint force surged into his weapon as he slashed down onto the warbeast. Just as Hudolf used his entire strength on that one strike, it didn't have any effect. The warbeast's skin remained undamaged like before, and not even a single strand of hair was cut. Damn it all! Hudolf couldn't help but curse out loud. Why is this warbeast so strong defensively? It's just standing there for me to kill, but I can't kill it. Captain, this warbeast is just too strong in terms of defense. We're not strong enough to harm its defenses, so what should we do, run away? A mercenary shouted to Hudolf. Captain, this warbeast is a Class 4 magical beast. Even if a great saint master can damage it, we surely cannot with our strength. It'd be for the best if we retreat. A gray-robed middle-aged man spoke to Hudolf from his side. That's right, Captain. We don't have any way of beating this war beast. Hearing his mercenaries' opinions, Hudolf didn't hesitate. Immediately barking out a command, he shouted, Brothers, head toward the caravans. I'll hold the war beast off. Yes. Immediately a dozen men ran back toward the caravans at the back of the group. The moment they saw the caravans, each one of them became thunderstruck. Each one of the caravans had been broken apart from the shockwaves, making it impossible to run away. Crap, what do we do now? With so many goods, I won't be able to store them all in all the space belts. The mercenaries all felt a bit awkward as Hari began to panic and fluster about with concern. Bang! Bang! At that moment, the earth shook violently once more as the war beast charged forward with heavy footsteps. Carrying with it an imposing air that had destroyed the caravans, its feet continued to harass the loyal spirit mercenaries underneath it without any concerns. Crap, it's coming. Sire Hari, you should store the most important items into your space belt first. With so many things, it's impossible to save them all. Seeing the war beast come trampling over, one of the mercenaries shouted nervously to the weak-looking man behind them. But, these items are all precious. This is practically my life savings. If I give them up, I will take disastrous losses. Plus, my space belt isn't even that big to begin with, so I won't be able to carry much. Hari cried out bitterly as he looked at the 10 broken caravans with a broken heart. No one needs to panic. This war beast here, leave it to me and I'll stall it. Just as Hari and a few other mercenaries were panicking, a calm voice suddenly rang out. Every person close by turned their heads to look at the owner of the voice only to see Jian Chen, who hadn't bothered to participate in this battle until now. The mercenaries and Hari's face had a skeptical look to it as they watched the 20-year-old Jian Chen walk forward. They clearly didn't believe the words he was speaking, and so a mercenary couldn't help but say, "What did you say, Jian Chen? You're going to stall the war beast?" Jian Chen, this war beast is unbelievably tough in terms of defenses. Not only that, but it's also a Class 4 magical beast. Unless we have an Earth Saint Master here with us, then it'll be impossible to fight this. Even a great Saint Master will be unable to pierce through the defenses of this war beast. An experienced mercenary explained to Jian Chen. He doubted Jian Chen due to his age and because of how strong the war beast was. As everyone called Jian Chen's strength into question, he only laughed without explaining himself. Walking forward, his body suddenly flew like a bullet toward the war beast 100 meters away. Jian Chen's speed was exceedingly fast. In the blink of an eye, he appeared right in front of the war beast and the light wind sword instantly materialized in his right hand. With a sharp amount of sword qi transforming the glow around the blade, Jian Chen thrust it in between the eyebrows of the war beast. Even as the light wind sword made contact with the space between war beast, it was prevented from going any further. Jian Chen's eyes narrowed for a moment as he felt the large amount of resistance against his sword. For a moment, Jian Chen had begun to doubt that this was a war beast and was instead an incomparably defensive essence. Ho! The war beast let out an angry snarl as both of its eyeballs stared at Jian Chen with a bloodthirsty glare and threw a hand at him. Turning his body in the air, he flew down to avoid the paw and landed gracefully on the ground. His eyes hardened as he looked at the gorilla-type war beast. What a strong defense, to somehow surpass my expectations by so much. No wonder the legends say that even magical crystal cannons aren't able to injure it. However, his initial sword strike had left the faintest of traces upon further observation despite not landing a substantial blow on the war beast. Although he didn't use his entire strength, Jian Chen knew that even with it, there was no guarantee that he would be able to split open the war beast's defenses. A war beast's defenses were legendary within the Tianyuan continent, and rumors had it that humans and magical beasts within the same level as the war beast would be utterly incapable of damaging it. Even if a human were to use an extremely strong battle skill, it would perhaps be able to create a small amount of damage. The moment a war beast reached the level of a Class 4 war beast, its defenses would also increase and even Earth Saint Masters would have a hard time killing it. Bang! 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 The war beast followed Jian Chen with his eyes as each footstep it made shook the ground. Walking toward Jian Chen, it could feel the slight pain still from Jian Chen's sword. Jian Chen, hurry up and run. The war beast is about to charge at you. Hudolph cried out. However, Jian Chen turned a deaf ear to Hudolph's warning, and with a sharp gaze that was filled with energy, he looked at the approaching war beast. Jian Chen's light wind sword suddenly burst into a violet and azure glow. Ho! The war beast was right in front of Jian Chen now. With another roar, it lifted a leg to stomp on Jian Chen. Jian Chen dodged the following step by moving to the side. Then jumped in between the war beast's eyebrows. The light wind sword stabbed forward like a flash of lightning. This time, the moment the sharp light wind sword made contact with the eyebrows of the war beast, it was almost as if the defenses no longer existed. The light wind sword easily stabbed through the war beast's defenses straight into its skull. The war beast's defense was like a piece of tofu in comparison to the light wind sword. The moment Jian Chen stabbed it with his light wind sword, he felt no resistance at all. Ayo! The war beast let out a miserable cry that reverberated through the air. Slowly, the howls of pain receded as the giant body slowly crashed to the ground. Jian Chen pulled out his light wind sword from the skull of the war beast as a few bloody drops fell to the ground. Bang! The war beast's gigantic body smashed against the ground, shaking the ground twice, sending a ton of dust flying up into the air. Chapter 209. Return to Wake City. Seeing the downed war beast, every single loyal spirit mercenary's face instantly grew lifeless. At this moment, every single movement had stopped as if everyone had frozen. Their eyes were stuck on the war beast, whose head was bleeding profusely with looks of extreme disbelief. The Class 4 war beast in front of them had a defense stronger than what any one of them could imagine. Even a great Saint Master would be hard-pressed to damage a war beast, and an Earth Saint Master with a battle skill would still need to use an astounding amount of effort to kill it. To see this unbelievably tenacious war beast killed by a youth not even over the age of 20, everyone was incredibly shocked. No one had expected this type of power from a person they picked up on the way to Wake City. At that moment, every loyal spirit mercenary realized that this low-profile man traveling with them was actually a high-leveled expert. Jian Chen didn't take notice of the shock of the loyal spirit mercenaries. At this moment, his mind was reeling from shock. He was surprised to learn that the violet and azure-colored sword spirit's power would be so strong. Despite his foreknowledge of it, Jian Chen still couldn't help but be shocked by the extent of the power. By Jian Chen's approximations, the defenses of the war beast would be incredibly difficult for him to make even a substantial amount of damage. If he really wanted to injure the war beast, he would need at least the strength of an Earth Saint Master, and yet with the power of the sword spirits, the war beast's defenses were like tofu. They allowed for the light wind sword to pierce through the skull without the slightest bit of resistance. Now was also the time that Jian Chen understood how terrifying the violet and azure sword spirits were. Although the sword chi was an extension of the sword spirits who were in a very weakened state, their power was still overwhelming. With this, Jian Chen realized that he had the fighting strength of an Earth Saint Master. The war beast is dead. Oh heavens! A war beast was killed, and this war beast was even at the Class 4 level in strength. Everyone had already returned to where the caravans were. One by one they expressed their feelings as everyone looked at Jian Chen with expressions of shock, while a few others had expressions of worship. The loyal spirit mercenaries' leader, Xueqi, let out a breath of air as he examined the ground where the dead war beast lay. With a slight shake of his head, he looked at Jian Chen, who was close by. After a moment of hesitation, he walked over to him. Jian Chen, I didn't think you'd be an expert of such profound strength. Ai, it is truly inconceivable that with your current age you are able to kill a war beast of this level. However, I as the representative of every member of the loyal spirit mercenaries must give you my thanks. You have solved a major problem for us. Xueqi spoke honestly and respectfully. Jian Chen's excitement began to decrease back to a normal level before smiling. This was no effort at all, so the captain needs not be so polite. Besides, we are sharing the road. If one of us comes across a problem, then it is natural that I provide assistance. Jian Chen and Xueqi began to talk among themselves politely for a while before the other mercenaries busied themselves with other matters. The loyal spirit mercenaries were split into two groups. One was responsible for repairing the caravans and loading up the goods, and the other group was responsible for dealing with the war beast's body. The body of a war beast was something the loyal spirit mercenaries wanted to sell, but because the body was far too strong and extremely heavy, they wouldn't be able to move it. So they could only bitterly bite their tongues and abandon it after Jian Chen extracted the monster core from within it. In a flash the caravans were repaired. Everyone resumed their travel to Wake City once more. Now, Jian Chen was sitting at the front of the very best caravan they had to offer, where the owner of the goods, Hari, sat with a friendly smile. Suddenly a thought flashed through Xueqi's head. Turning to Jian Chen he asked, Ah, Jian Chen, seeing how young you are, you've only just started to travel within the Tianyuan continent, correct? Jian Chen nodded his head. Ah yes, I've only been traveling for 2 or 3 years now. Then would you consider joining our loyal spirit mercenaries? While we aren't extremely strong, every member here is very close. We're a tightly knit group. After traveling the Tianyuan continent for many years, our experience is quite abundant. Plus, if you travel with us, you will be familiarized with the continent quickly and learn of the many dangers. Even the strongest of mercenaries will lose out on many things if they are not experienced with the continent. Xueqi spoke with an anxious look of anticipation as he tried to rope Jian Chen into his group. Giving an apologetic smile, Jian Chen replied. This one thanks Captain Hudolph for his offer, but I've already joined a mercenary group. Ah, what a great shame then, Hudolph said disappointedly. He then looked at Jian Chen once more and spoke again. For a mercenary group to have a person like you, then that must mean that mercenary group is quite strong. Jian Chen shook his head with a bitter smile. Right now, aside from me, there is only one other person in it. I am the captain. Hudolph looked at Jian Chen with astonishment, but no words came out from his mouth. The man was thinking about something inside his head. Afterward, the group continued to travel toward Wake City slowly. On the road, Jian Chen's position within the Loyal Spirit Mercenaries had took a drastic change. Everyone was very respectful to him, to the point of far surpassing that of their Captain Hudolph. Even Captain Hudolph himself had taken on a warm and affectionate tone with him. The road was relatively peaceful after that. Another 3 days went by before the caravan finally reached the territory of Wake City. At this, Jian Chen could already make out the magical beast mountain range 20 kilometers from Wake City. In front of them, the tall city walls of Wake City greeted everyone's eyes. Even after 1 year had passed, the city walls hadn't changed at all. The only difference was that the amount of soldiers on top of the city walls had multiplied. Even the amount of guards at the gates had reached a larger number than Jian Chen had remembered. Seeing the familiar walls once more in a state like he had remembered, Jian Chen couldn't help but remember when the Tianxiong clan had chased him out of the city and forced him to make a miserable escape. Tianxiong clan. I, Jian Chen, have returned. Chapter 210. A timely meeting in the restaurant. The caravan entered the city without any problems. Jian Chen and the Loyal Spirit Mercenaries bid each other farewell and set about their own paths. Seeing Jian Chen walk farther and farther away, Hudolph had a look of hesitation on his face as he sat on his mount. His head lowered in thought before biting his lips, as if he had reached a conclusion before turning to look at this group of mercenaries. Brothers, after all of the goods are delivered properly, do not leave yet. There is one more matter I wish to talk to everyone about. Yes, Captain. The Loyal Spirit Mercenaries all cried out in agreement. Although each one of them had some sort of question on their mind, not a single one of them said it out loud. Jian Chen walked through the large streets, but unlike last time, Jian Chen felt that the atmosphere in the city was heavier, as if some big event was about to happen soon. He then walked into a restaurant where people bustled about their business and the sweet aroma of food wafted into his nose. Smelling the unique fragrance of meat and vegetables, Jian Chen couldn't help but stop and admire the smell for a brief moment before continuing in. While he resided within the Huang village, Jian Chen had spent many days with a simple meal and tea and hadn't been able to eat any delicacies that only a city restaurant could offer. At the beckoning of a waitress, Jian Chen sat at a table so he could have a meal to eat. There was a window located by the table. Right now the day was already noon, so the restaurant was full of people. A group of sturdy-looking people sat near him and talked loudly over their meals. Do you know when this next magical beast wave will happen or how long it'll last? The city lord made an announcement. The wave should occur within a few days' time. But according to the last wave, this wave might last for over 10 days. The sounds of chatter reached Jian Chen's ears. The interesting tidbits he heard caused his ears to vibrate in interest. In thought, Jian Chen muttered to himself, a wave of magical beasts. Could it be that the magical beasts from the magical beast mountain range are coming to besiege the city? If so, then it's no wonder that the atmosphere in the city is so tense. With that, Jian Chen continued to eat his meal while listening in on the men talking to each other. With each bite of food he made, he digested the information he heard. Hey, look! Isn't that the Zhou mercenaries? One voice in particular stood out to Jian Chen, and the moment the words registered in his head, Jian Chen immediately froze in place as he was reaching out with his chopsticks to pick up a slice of meat. Slowly raising his head, he looked out the door of the restaurant only to see a group of 4 armored mercenaries with an impressive design walk into the building. These 4 mercenaries had the same exact armor with an identical emblem imprinted on their armor. Aside from the helmets, these mercenaries looked to be the same exact ones like the ones Jian Chen had met at the Magical Beast Mountain Range. The 4 Zhou mercenaries walked to a table near Jian Chen and sat down. After ordering a meal, the 4 began to talk quietly among themselves. Following the entrance of the 4 Zhou mercenaries, the topics in the restaurant began to divert to be about the Zhou mercenaries. I've heard the Zhou mercenary captain Zhou Yun made a breakthrough into the Great Saint Master level 3 months ago. With a Great Saint Master, The Zhou mercenaries are surely much stronger than before. Right now within Wake City, the Zhou mercenaries are nearly unparalleled in strength. That sounds about right. Ever since Zhou Yun made a breakthrough to Great Saint Master, the strength of the entire group increased rapidly. Right now their members number over 100, and with the support of the Zhou clan, then within Wake City, the Zhou mercenaries can easily be considered one of the strongest three. Many of the diners were chatting quietly, but each one of them were quite strong, so they could easily talk to each other without fear of angering the four mercenaries. Hearing the chatter of all the people around them, the four Zhou mercenaries sitting near Jian Chen couldn't help but have arrogant looks on their faces. Within the small Wake City, a great Saint Master was considered one of the peak experts. Their statuses had skyrocketed ever since their captain made a breakthrough to become a great Saint Master as well as gaining so many members. Zhou mercenaries, I didn't think I'd see you in Wake City. Jian Chen stared coldly at the Zhou mercenaries with an intense desire to kill. Slowly putting down the chopsticks in his hand, Jian Chen walked to the four Zhou mercenaries and looked straight at them before speaking slowly. You four are from the Zhou mercenaries? The four Zhou mercenaries all looked at Jian Chen. From his tone and posture, the Zhou mercenaries could all tell that Jian Chen was not favorable to them. In a flash, their own eyes stared coldly back at Jian Chen. Correct. We are members of the Zhou mercenaries. Kid, who are you? Speak your name. A sturdy-looking mercenary said arrogantly to Jian Chen. Everyone within the restaurant began to look at the interaction between the four Zhou mercenaries and Jian Chen. Putting down their bowls and chopsticks, everyone tried to pay close attention to what they were saying and started to prepare themselves just in case a fight would happen. Humph, Jian Chen snorted. There was a look of disdain on his face as he remained quiet. Instead, the light wind sword instantly appeared in his hand before spearing the throat of one of the Zhou mercenaries. Seeing the sword pierce their comrade's throat, the other three mercenaries were in shock for a brief moment before recovering themselves and crying out furiously. To dare go against us Zhou mercenaries, do you seek death? One roared as the other two members charged at Jian Chen with their saint weapons ready to slash at Jian Chen. He pulled the light wind sword out from the dead mercenary with a smooth gesture before it flashed silver once more. As the three saint weapons danced and flew at Jian Chen, his sword flew out and cut through the throats of two of the mercenaries and stopped right in front of the neck of the final remaining mercenary. As the saint weapon stopped briefly in front of his neck, the last mercenary quickly recalled his own saint weapon with an extremely pale face. He didn't dare believe that a 20-year-old youth like Jian Chen would be able to beat him. His strength was at the primary Saint Master level, but he was no match for a small youth like Jian Chen. His eyes shook slightly as he turned his head to look at the two previously alive mercenaries by his side. His eyes could only see the small rivulet of blood pouring from their necks before their bodies fell to the ground. At this, the final mercenary's courage broke as he felt panic in his heart. Hastily, he began to cry out for forgiveness. Don't kill me, don't. Great swordsman, if there's something you want to say, say it. Just don't kill me. I'll do anything you want me to. Seeing the look of fright on the mercenary's face, Jian Chen sneered. Bring me to your general headquarters for the Zhou mercenaries, otherwise, I'll kill you here and now. Chapter 211, Judgment Day for the Zhou mercenaries, 1. With a sword pointing straight at his throat, the mercenary didn't dare to try and put up a courageous face. Without hesitating to answer Jian Chen's request, he took him to the headquarters of the Zhou mercenaries with a look of alarm. Jian Chen and the mercenary walked out of the restaurant, but within it, the previously silent building exploded with chatter as everyone looked on with disbelief at the three dead corpses of the Zhou mercenaries. In shock, each diner started to chat to one another about the event that just happened in front of them. Who is that youth? His strength is unexpectedly high to be able to kill three Zhou mercenaries. I didn't even get to see his movements at all since they were so quick. What a truly shocking event. I am already 40 years old, but my strength hasn't even passed that of a primary Saint Master. But that youth is barely 20 years old and he killed a few men that are around my strength in a flash. How inconceivable. That youth is far too strong. I estimate that he is at the great Saint Master level. Could it be the Zhou mercenaries have offended him and he has come to take revenge today? The Zhou mercenaries' captain Zhou Yun also has the strength of a great Saint Master. They also have multiple Saint Master experts. This youth has raised the banners of war so quickly for the Zhou mercenaries' main army. I am not sure if he will even be an opponent for them. This mysterious expert youth surely has a vendetta against the Zhou mercenaries. After that marvelous fighting ability, I wish to see their fight. Right, there'll surely be a fight in a moment. Let's hurry up and go see it. Let's go. Everyone has to go see this once-in-a-lifetime event. After that, every single person in the restaurant cried out their approval and stampeded out of the restaurant, practically leaving the place empty. Jian Chen didn't bother to hold his light wind sword at the Zhou mercenary. Instead, he slowly walked behind him with a calm look as the two flowed through the streets. Although he wasn't paying much attention to the mercenary in front of him, if the mercenary wanted to run away, Jian Chen's light wind sword would instantly pierce through his neck. Behind Jian Chen, the group of people from the restaurant followed at a distance of 50 meters. The Zhou mercenaries were based within Wake City in a single central house. Right above the gates to the house, a single board written in fancy calligraphy had the words, Zhou mercenaries, written on it with a group of 4 heavily armored mercenaries standing right below it. Seeing the giant board on top of the gates, Jian Chen couldn't help but have a gloomy yet dark smile on his face as a flash of killing intent appeared within his eyes before following the mercenary to the headquarters. This is the territory of the Zhou mercenaries. Speak your name. Just as Jian Chen approached the giant gates, the guards at the gates blocked his path with a cold look and a loud shout. Humph! Jian Chen snorted once more as the light wind sword appeared in his right hand. In a flash, the heavily armored mercenary had his throat pierced as blood began to spill all over the ground. The Zhou mercenary gripped at his neck with his hands as his face began to pale before ultimately, his body fell to the ground. Seeing their dead comrade on the ground, the other 3 mercenaries were all shocked. They quickly regained their bearings and cried out in anger. How brazen! To kill one of our Zhou mercenaries! You are impatient for death. Immediately 2 saint weapons flew at Jian Chen as the last one retreated in between the gates to report the commotion. Suddenly, just as the 2 mercenaries moved into action, Jian Chen's light wind sword flashed silver and stabbed into the throats of the 2 before they could even react fast enough to register the sword. In a single moment, Jian Chen had killed 3 of the 4 guards at the gate, and the last one had escaped inside to warn the others. Staring coldly at the 3 dead bodies on the ground, Jian Chen looked at the board overhead. Zhou mercenaries, today is the day you will be eradicated from Wake City. With that, he leaped into the air with a faint glow of his light wind sword and slashed apart the board symbolizing the Zhou mercenaries. After destroying the Zhou mercenaries' board, Jian Chen immediately kicked apart the gates with a crashing noise. The wooden gates had been instantly blasted off the door hinges before landing on the ground far away from him. Bang! Just as the large gates fell to the ground, a large sound reverberated through the air along with the doors breaking into pieces and flying everywhere in a storm of splinters. Humph! Who is so audacious to go and attack our Zhou mercenaries? At the same time, a furious voice called out to Jian Chen from inside. Jian Chen walked forward casually step by step. He walked with a gentle approach as if he were on an evening stroll. Even his face was calm as if he wasn't taking the Zhou mercenaries seriously. As Jian Chen walked into the courtyard, the figures inside the house suddenly appeared in front of Jian Chen's eye. In the previously empty space in front of him, a single blue-robed middle-aged man stood there. The man looked to be around 50 years old with a few scars adorning his face. They made his appearance rather frightening. Following the entrance of this man, another group of 20 people flew into the courtyard in quick succession, a few of them running while the others flew down from the ceiling. In a short moment, there was a total of over 100 men filling up the courtyard with Jian Chen in the center, surrounded. The man with the scarred face stared coldly at Jian Chen as he measured him up. Kid, who are you and why are you here to fight with us Zhou mercenaries? Jian Chen returned the glare as he looked around himself. Instead of answering the man, he asked his own question. Is this everyone from the Zhou mercenaries? Hearing this, the middle-aged man furrowed his eyebrows. What is the meaning of your question? Jian Chen let out the smallest of smiles as his right hand clenched the light wind sword. A sharp amount of sword chi filled the air around it as he whispered, From here on out, Wake City will no longer have the Zhou mercenary. Chapter 212, Judgment Day for the Zhou mercenaries, 2. When Jian Chen's calm promise reached the ears of every Zhou mercenaries, their faces all changed abruptly. In an instant, every cold glare directed at Jian Chen was replaced with a furious anger and killing desire. The scarred man had a look of fury as well as his expression grew dark. A very intense amount of killing intent emanated from his eyes as he stared fiercely at Jian Chen with a sneer. Kid, with just you have no qualifications to speak of such a thing. Someone, Go and seize him. Let this ignorant kid understand how high the heavens are compared to the earth. Let him know our Zhou mercenaries are not someone to fight with." As the man barked out an order, the surrounding mercenaries didn't hesitate for a moment as each one of them materialized their saint weapons and charged at Jian Chen from every possible angle. Jian Chen let out a sneer as his body flickered out of sight. Just as the last of his body flickered away, the saint weapons from his enemies all hit nothing but air. Jian Chen rapidly moved back and forth like a bolt of lightning as he lashed out with his light wind sword, easily stabbing mercenary after mercenary in the throat. His sword moved with a nimble grace, fast enough for the regular saints and great saints to die without knowing it. Each one of them crumpled to the ground as they were killed. Although it was Jian Chen against over 100 men, the difference between the two sides was far too vast. So it had become a massacre for the Zhou mercenaries. In fact, for Jian Chen, it was almost as if the Zhou mercenaries weren't even fighting back since they were utterly incapable of capturing Jian Chen. Under the quick sword of Jian Chen, another 2 men met a quick death. Then in the time it took for one small breath, 8 people died to his sword. The battle lasted for another 5 small breaths before the group of 100 men instantly fell down to half its original numbers. The scarred man looked on at the massacre Jian Chen had made with a dazed expression. In just a matter of a few dozen seconds, Jian Chen had managed to kill 50 people inconceivably quick. What frightened the scarred man was how fast and efficiently Jian Chen had killed those men. Jian Chen continued to flow through each opponent smoothly like water. With each movement he made, another man fell to his sword with blood flying through the air. The floor alone had begun to form a pool of mixed blood from each of Jian Chen's victims. The merciless slaughter continued for a little longer as each Zhou mercenary cried out a battle cry continuously. Unsurprisingly, not a single one of them who exchanged a blow with Jian Chen had cried out in pain, since Jian Chen had cut apart their throats and rendered them speechless. Some of them weren't even able to feel the pain before losing their life. After another 10 breaths, Jian Chen had finally come to a stop and ended the one-sided massacre. At this moment, the entire courtyard was littered with the dead bodies of the Zhou mercenaries. There had been 100 of them, but after Jian Chen was done with them, all 100 of them were scattered on top of each other. Each one of the bodies had a single wound to their neck that let blood flow freely onto the ground, dyeing it a crimson red. The stench of the blood began to waft up into the air and would definitely make anyone vomit if they smelled it. By now, it was only the scarred man with a dozen other men right behind him that were left. All of them had sluggish looks on their faces as if they couldn't believe what had just transpired. There used to be 100 people. However, in a short moment, all of them were killed thoroughly by a youth that was no older than 20 years old. Even though they had personally witnessed this shocking massacre, they still couldn't believe it. The 11 people were terribly frightened where they stood without a single voice escaping from them. Jian Chen stared at the remaining people with a level expression before a merciless grin slowly replaced it. The first 100 people he had killed were only those of the saint and great saint level. But these remaining people were the pillars of the Zhou mercenaries, who were all at least the level of a saint master. Without sparing any time, Jian Chen's figure went into motion as he flew toward the remaining dozen people. The light wind sword flew in a silver arc and effortlessly stabbed into the throats of 2 of the men, claiming the lives of 2 saint masters with ease. Now that Jian Chen had made a breakthrough into the great saint master level, these saint masters were nothing more than weak ants in his eyes. Even his sword would be unavoidable to a saint master. Jian Chen didn't have any intentions of letting a single Zhou mercenary escape. After killing 2 of the saint masters at lightning-fast speed, Jian Chen's light wind sword once again turned into a silver-white blur, enveloping the remaining people with his sword qi. PCH. 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 The light wind sword came down another 3 times and in an instant, 3 saint masters had their throats pierced. Up until this moment, the remaining few saint masters had been paralyzed. Each one of them then regained themselves with a look of abject horror and instantly moved to dodge Jian Chen in a strange attempt to distract him. Stop, stop. If there's something you want to say it quickly. The scarred man cried out to Jian Chen in a frantic manner as he dodged to the side. Right now his expression was no longer that of shock. Instead, horror and desperation adorned it. Jian Chen stopped his massacre for a brief moment before staring at the few saint masters. Speak then, where is your captain? In the restaurant, Jian Chen had figured out that the captain of the Zhou mercenaries was a great saint master expert. Within this group of people, he had realized that not a single one of them were at that level. With this situation, that could only mean that the captain was not here. That wouldn't do, since Jian Chen wanted to kill the captain. The scarred man let out a deep breath as he tried to calm his nerves. Unsuccessfully, he stared at Jian Chen and spoke with a trembling voice. Brother, I don't know what our Zhou mercenaries captain has done to offend you to the point that you want to eradicate us all. Compared to before, the scarred man's attitude had taken a complete turn. Jian Chen's cold gaze turned even darker as he stepped toward the scarred man. Each step he took made the man even more nervous before Jian Chen said, I'll ask you one last time, where is your captain? Jian Chen had not bothered to pay attention to the other's question. Seeing how Jian Chen was approaching him, the man took a few steps back with some hesitation. Wherever the captain is, I know not. Hearing that, Jian Chen's eyes flashed coldly and cared no more for the scarred man. Instantly appearing in front of him, the light wind sword stabbed straight for the man's throat. The man's face suddenly dropped as he tried to fly backward. In an instant a sword appeared in his hand as he attempted to block the light wind sword. However, before he could even bring his sword into position, the light wind sword had already approached his neck and buried itself deeply within. The bloody tip protruded through the back of his neck. Seeing that the scarred man stood no chance against Jian Chen, the remaining few Saint Masters' faces all paled in fright from the domineering power Jian Chen had revealed. Run away! Find the captain. He's the only one that can avenge us. One Saint Master cried out in terror as he ran for the gates to Wake City. Right, find the captain quickly. The other Saint Masters suddenly came to their senses. Without further hesitation, they each threw each other behind in their attempts to escape from the place. Jian Chen slowly pulled the bloody light wind sword from the dead scarred man. Looking at the escaping Saint Masters, he sneered before following them on their way out. Not too long after Jian Chen had left, the group of people that had followed him from the restaurant suddenly appeared in a huge crowd at the Zhou mercenaries' headquarters. However, just as this group of people saw the terrifying sight that lay beyond the broken gates, all their faces grew alarmed as they couldn't believe what they were seeing. From the time it took Jian Chen to enter the headquarters to when he left, hadn't even been over 10 breaths of time. In such a short amount of time, the headquarters had been littered with corpses of over 100 men. Such a sight would astound anyone. Chapter 213. Zhou Clan. Although Wake City was on the verge of being besieged by magical beasts, no one within Wake City was feeling any sort of dread or panic. The only difference was that the atmosphere in the city was a little heavy, but the citizens continued on with their business as usual. The magical beast mountain range was very close to Wake City, about 20 kilometers away. It towered over the Class 3 city that was highly experienced, repelling waves of magical beast attacks. Even the city walls were equivalent to walls in a Class 1 city. Every single time magical beasts attacked the city, this small Class 3 city would always stand straight and tall. So those who were born and raised in this city were all used to the besiegement of the magical beasts. Within Wake City, the city lord had announced the news as well as posted the mission within the mercenary union. Practically every single mercenary had congregated within Wake City in preparation for the magical beast's attack. Nowadays, the streets within Wake City had more people than ever. If one were to look closely, one would notice most of the people walking the streets were mercenaries who were also making most of the racket. Out of the way I said. Out of the way. At this moment, a loud and frantic voice rang through the streets, causing everyone to turn their heads. They could only see a few middle-aged men barreling through the streets desperately. Each one of them wore different colored robes, but the insignia on their chests were identical. Whoever was unfortunate enough to block their way was unceremoniously pushed aside, causing them to earn the ire and curses of everyone. Some had grown violent, and the stronger men began to bring out their saint weapons as if looking to make them pay for their crime. Look at their badges. Aren't they members of the Zhou mercenaries? They're really the Zhou mercenaries. Why are they in such a panicked state? It's almost as if they're being chased by someone. When a few of the people on the streets recognized the badges on the men, they were all surprised to see this strange event. Even the men that had been pushed out of the way by them suppressed their furious wrath and saint weapons the moment they heard that the group was from the Zhou mercenaries. The captain of the Zhou mercenaries, Zhou Yun, was a great saint master. This type of matter was not a small one within Wake City. After all, Wake City was a Class 3 city. A great saint master was considered to be the apex of experts within the city. Now that the Zhou mercenaries had a great saint master within their ranks, their identity had skyrocketed to become one of the strongest groups in the city. Now, not many people would dare to offend the Zhou mercenaries. These Zhou mercenaries members ran through the streets at a fast pace until they finally disappeared within the crowd. On the road, they attracted the flabbergasted eyes of the nearby bystanders. As soon as the Zhou mercenaries disappeared within the crowd, a white light suddenly shot through the crowd and chased after the Zhou mercenaries members from behind. What's happening? Could the Zhou mercenaries have run into trouble? That can't be. Right now the Zhou mercenaries have a great Saint Master and also have the close support of the Zhou clan. Who could possibly be looking for trouble with the Zhou mercenaries? From this, everyone on the streets began to think up random conjecture as they shared every possibility with each other. The Zhou mercenaries continued with their mad and desperate dash for another 10 kilometers where they finally reached a grand-looking mansion with a large 4 meters tall and 6 meters wide gate. On top of the large gate, a wide board had the words, Zhou clan written in dazzling gold words. Just from this alone, those who looked at the sign could tell that the owner of this house had a considerable amount of financial power and was quite strong physically. Let us in, we are a part of the Zhou mercenaries with important business with the captain. A Zhou mercenary member called out frantically to the guard standing right next to the gate. When the guard saw the group of people rushing at him with such frantic looks on their faces, he knew that something was happening and didn't dare to obstruct them any longer, allowing them passage inside. Within the Zhou clan's residence in a grand hall, a single 70-year-old elder sat at the first position of a table with 10 other members nearby. The elder stared at a heavily armored figure nearby. The man was sturdy and was calm before the elder laughed. Commander Duo Li, you need not to worry about this. Our Zhou clan has towered over the rest of Wake City for 10 years. It can be said that Wake City is our hometown now. This matter of the magical beast wave will indeed have our Zhou clan ready to fight. We will give it our all to defend Wake City. The armored middle-aged man gave a small smile as he cupped his hands together. With the words of the Zhou clan's elder, this commander is relieved. With the Zhou clan added to our forces, then our victory is assured, and since Sire Zhou Yun is now a great Saint Master, this is truly a celebration to be joyous about. The elder's face had a gratified smile on it after hearing those words, but he spoke modestly. Commander Duo Li gives too much praise. Zhou Yun's cultivation talent is too outstanding. We've just spent many coins on monster cores which allowed him to cultivate and break through into the great Saint Master realm smoothly. The elder then looked at another man sitting far down the table. This man wore a blue-colored robe with his hair tied up in a whip-like fashion that hung over his shoulders. His eyes had a calm yet powerful look. This man was the leader of the Zhou mercenaries, Zhou Yun. Just as the elder finished talking, a loud frantic cry came bursting in from the hallways outside the room. Captain, Captain! Something terrible has happened. Truly a terrible matter. As soon as the voice was heard, suddenly, a man with a Zhou mercenary insignia on his chest came bursting into the room with a few other men behind him panting wildly. These men's sorrowful appearances caused everyone that noticed it to furrow their eyebrows in surprise. Some had even looked at them with an annoyed face. Impudence! Do you not see that we are having a meeting here? Who let you in? Do you not remember our rules, our system of conduct? Clan leader, something bad has happened. An extremely strong and terrifying man has declared revenge on us. Our 100-member-strong Zhou mercenaries has been eradicated and only the ones here are left alive. The leader of the group cried out to the elder. Hearing that, everyone in the vicinity grew alarmed. What? Did you just say that you are all that are left of the Zhou mercenaries? Zhou Yun spoke with a serious face. Immediately standing up, he strode on over to the man with a loud shout. Yes, Captain. It is only us that are alive. The mercenary shouted miserably with a small tremble to his voice. No one else. Zhou Yun's eyes instantly grew dark. Everyone is dead, Captain. Another mercenary said. Hearing this, a great amount of killing intent flowed out from Zhou Yun as he growled furiously. Who would dare? Bang! Before Zhou Yun could finish his statement, the large gates to the Zhou clan's mansion blew open with a great sound before breaking into 4 different pieces that flew into the courtyard. Chapter 214. The Zhou clan's brave rush. This large sound stunned everyone. However, they quickly regained their bearings and their expressions grew dark. No one present was a mediocre person and had a decent sense of hearing. Just from hearing the door break into pieces, they knew that a man had done it. Impudence! The clan leader of the Zhou mercenaries slammed his hand onto the armrest of his throne, causing a large splitting sound to ring through the room. Who dares to be so audacious? To cause trouble for our Zhou clan? Everyone with me. Let us go see who dares tread on this sacred ground. The Zhou clan leader stood up with a dark expression. As he stomped out of the room toward the courtyard with a furious mood, everyone else followed. The Zhou clan leader brought the group to the entrance of the courtyard where 10 guards of the Zhou clan were already stationed. From every corner, more and more guards began to pour in and increase their numbers constantly. Move out of the way, the clan leader is here. A sharp-eyed guard cried the moment he saw the clan leader come toward them. Like water, the crowd of guards immediately made way for the clan leader to walk through. But even after that, the entire area was filled to the brim with Zhou clan guards. Surrounded by the Zhou clan guards was a single youth that was around the age of 20. The youth wore a white robe that seemed to be of an inferior material, but that did nothing to hide the characteristics of this youth. The youth was exceptionally handsome, and had pale skin that emphasized his facial features. Although his expression was neutral, there was a charm in his eyes that would make any female that saw it go crazy. The moment they saw this 20-year-old youth, the Zhou clan leader's glare flashed with a cold look as he spoke out. Who are you to dare cause trouble for our Zhou clan? Do you think our Zhou clan is an easy target to bully? Jian Chen returned the leader's stare with a calm one as he spoke to the elder. And who are you? Humph. Seeing the look of disdain from Jian Chen, the frost in the Zhou clan leader's eyes intensified. This old man is the leader of the Zhou clan, Zhou Batong. Oh, so you're the leader of the Zhou clan? Jian Chen had a faint smile on his face as he cupped his hands together with a false smile. This one is called Jian Chen. I've come to find a person. As long as the Zhou clan leader brings out this person, I will leave. Zhou Batong laughed angrily. Looking for someone? Haha, brat. You need a lesson on knowing who your superiors are. To dare demand something from the leader of the Zhou clan. Brat, within Wake City, the amount of people that would dare demand something from the Zhou clan are nearly none. You are the first. Jian Chen laughed as well. It would appear that I should be happy about this. Zhou clan leader, I won't mince words with you. Do you know whether or not the leader of the Zhou mercenaries, Zhou Yun, is here? I am Zhou Yun. The moment Jian Chen spoke, Zhou Yun walked forward from the crowd with eyes that emanated a killing intent that felt as if he was a hungry wolf waiting to devour Jian Chen. I've heard you've slaughtered my Zhou mercenaries in an instant. Is that true? It is. Hearing those two words, Zhou Yun couldn't hold himself back. His eyes flashed dangerously as the killing intent flew out at Jian Chen. Instantly, a long spear appeared within Zhou Yun's hand as he shouted, You dare destroy the mercenary group I spent 20 years creating? Youngster, it matters not who you are, I, Zhou Yun, will make you live a life worse than death and suffer from the eternal torment of the world. With this, I will take revenge for my fallen brothers. A large amount of saint force flew from his saint weapon as he stabbed at Jian Chen. Jian Chen revealed a cold smile as the light wind sword appeared in his right hand and flew out at the same time as the spear. Ding! The light wind sword carried a large amount of sword chi as it struck against Zhou Yun's spear firmly. A large sound rang out into the air as the two saint weapons made contact with each other. In every possible direction a large shockwave spread out so dense that it could be seen by the naked eye. Along with the pulse of saint force, a large cloud of dust was kicked up and surrounded the area. At the same time, the weaker guards of the Zhou clan were forced back a few steps because of it. Sword met spear as Jian Chen and Zhou Yun were locked in a stalemate. Immediately in between the two a white-colored glow appeared as the light wind sword suddenly shot toward Zhou Yun's throat. This sword was unbelievably fast, so much so that before Zhou Yun could react, it was already less than a foot away from his throat. Zhou Yun's face suddenly grew startled, but because of his countless years of battle experience, he remained calm under pressure and instantly kicked backward. At the same time the long spear in his hand sprung back to him and went to block the sword. Ding! Just as Zhou Yun brought his spear in front of himself, the light wind sword slashed across the spear, transmitting a large amount of power through it. The power continued to transmit from the spear to Zhou Yun and forced him to stagger a few steps back. Although this wasn't a fatal attack, Zhou Yun's face was suddenly wet with perspiration as it went pale with shock. What a fast sword! It was so fast, I was almost too slow to dodge it. Even though Zhou Yun was a great saint master, it hadn't been a long time since he made that breakthrough. He was only a primary great saint master, and compared to Jian Chen, Zhou Yun's strength was comparable to a peak saint master at most. Then, as Zhou Yun was pondering to himself and tried to stabilize his backward momentum, A white light suddenly flew at him with an even faster speed than the first one. In a split second, the light wind sword had reached the throat of Zhou Yun. This moment, Zhou Yun could only look at the sword in shock due to how fast the sword was, instantly realizing that he had no time to react. Suddenly, just as Zhou Yun resigned himself to death, a large broadsword flew out to come across Zhou Yun's body. At the same time, Zhou Yun could feel two elderly but powerful arms grab him around the shoulders and pull him away from his death. Ding! A screeching sound could be heard as the sword that was originally meant to pierce into Zhou Yun's throat stabbed against the horizontally flying sword. The owner of this sword had unexpectedly been the leader of the Zhou clan, Zhou Batong. However, the feeling that Zhou Batong was giving off felt as if he was a sword that had yet to be unsheathed. It was only after this moment that people felt that the sword was now being unveiled and was ready to strike. Looking coldly at the newly arrived Zhou Batong, Jian Chen gave a small smile. Zhou clan leader, seeing you right now, it would appear that you wish to bring the Zhou clan into this. Chapter 215. Participation of the Zhou clan. At this moment, the Zhou clan leader Zhou Butong's face was exceptionally grim. Staring at Jian Chen with a gaze that had lost the original glare of disdain, he no longer thought Jian Chen was just a youth. Now, Zhou Batong thought him to be an opponent of an equal level and didn't dare to belittle him any longer. That was because of Jian Chen's first two strikes, allowing Zhou Batong to determine Jian Chen to be very strong. If he hadn't made a move, then his son Zhou Yun would have been killed. Furthermore, when he made a move to protect his son, he had moved at the fastest speed he could muster. Jian Chen's 3 sword strikes were something that he couldn't afford to underestimate, and the third strike had caused him to act out of necessity. Secretly, Zhou Batong had felt shock within his heart. Jian Chen couldn't have been any older than 20, but for such a young man he had such a disproportionate amount of strength. Due to his accumulated amount of experience over the years, he could guess that Jian Chen had no major person backing him up. Yet, he couldn't believe that a youth with no major power behind him would be able to have the strength of a great saint master. Zhou Batong stared evenly at Jian Chen. I don't know which clan my young friend here is a part of and what grievances you have with my son Zhou Yun, but perhaps this is a misunderstanding? Whether or not this is a misunderstanding, my heart already knows the truth. The past I will not speak of, but today I will definitely kill Zhou Yun. If your Zhou clan stays out of this, then naturally nothing will happen to you. But if your Zhou clan decides to take part, then I will eradicate it as well. Jian Chen's voice was calm on the surface, but there was a hint of a domineering tone to it. Yet, as the Zhou clan heard the words of Jian Chen, their expressions grew dark and the air around them began to fill with an impressive amount of killing intent. Even as the atmosphere grew tense, Jian Chen's attitude did not change at all from his cold demeanor. Zhou Butong's face grew darker as well, but nonetheless, he stared at Jian Chen and said, "You speak far too loud, my friend. I can admit, your strength is quite decent, but for you to try and eradicate the entirety of my Zhou clan? Humph, you truly think that my Zhou clan is like mud?" Zhou clan leader, it would appear that Zhou Yun is someone you are determined to protect. Jian Chen's voice gradually grew colder as his eyes flashed with a biting cold killing intent. Zhou Batong readied his own sword. "If you wish to claim my son's life, then let's see your reason why." Wait a moment. Just as the two sides readied to fight, a loud voice called out. Looking to the source of the voice, both Jian Chen and Zhou Batong realized that it belonged to a heavily armored middle-aged man. The armored man walked forward before stopping in between Jian Chen and Zhou Batong. With a small smile to Jian Chen he said, "Fellow brother, could your grievances with the Zhou clan be resolved with a small talk? If there is a possibility of making a big problem turn into no problem, then that would be for the best. There is no need for the two of you to fight. The magical beast wave is coming to Wake City soon, and so this is the moment where the entire city must unite as one. For the sake of unison, please talk it out. After all, this magical beast wave endangers the lives of tens of thousands of ordinary citizens. Fellow brother, please think about it for a moment." The man tried to soothe Jian Chen's fighting spirit. Jian Chen looked at the armored man with a calm gaze before asking him a simple question. "Who are you?" Despite the rude way Jian Chen had asked, the armored man was not angry. Instead, he gave a faint smile and said, "I am called Duo Li. I am the commander of Wake City's defensive soldiers and the one in charge of them. So you are Commander Duo Li. Commander Duo Li, please step back. This is a matter between me and them and I do not wish to involve you." Jian Chen replied. Commander Duo Li let out a breath of air. Brother, these are not peaceful times. Could you not sit down and talk this out? Jian Chen shook his head calmly. There is nothing to talk about. Commander Duo Li, please step back. Commander Duo Li, this isn't something you should get involved in. This ignorant youth wants to destroy my Zhou clan. Then I will let him know the true power of my Zhou clan. Furthermore, the mercenary group my son has shed blood and tears for has been destroyed by this youth. Speak. Do you truly think there is room for discussion still? Zhou Badong spoke as he looked at Jian Chen with the urge to kill. Arrogant child, let me test you for myself. Suddenly, Zhou Butong's figure flew toward Jian Chen with his sword bursting with saint force ready to split open Jian Chen as it flew down toward his head. Jian Chen's gaze frosted over as his light wind sword flew out to block the sword. Seeing that the situation had blown out of control, Commander Duo Li narrowed his eyes and muttered to himself. Wake City is on the verge of being besieged by a magical beast wave, and although this youth is very young, his strength is at the great Saint Master level. With a strength like this, it is absolutely crucial that these two sides aren't harmed. If I want to resolve the grudge between these two, I need the City Lord. With that, Commander Duo Li didn't hesitate anymore and left the area headed toward the City Lord's manor in a desperate rush. While he ran, Jian Chen was left within the Zhou clan's courtyard to fight against the entire Zhou clan. Zhou Batong was a great Saint Master who had reached the peak level 20 years ago. The distance left before reaching Earth Saint Master level was merely a step. It was only because of the danger in making the breakthrough to Earth Saint Master that caused him to stay at the Great Saint Master level. So for the past 20 years, he remained at the peak Great Saint Master level and refined his strength. The light wind sword in Jian Chen's hand danced in the air as it flew at Zhou Badong. Its movements flowed into each other, stroke by stroke, causing Zhou Badong to be shocked by Jian Chen's impeccable sword technique. He had to completely devoted himself to his fighting, and used the full extent of the power of a great Saint Master. Despite that, he was still having trouble defending against Jian Chen, who seemed to be on an equal level to him. However, while Jian Chen continued to stab at Zhou Budong's sword, he had also begun to take away the lives of the Zhou clan guards one by one. Chapter 216. Great War of the Zhou clan. The fight continued for some time as the guards from the Zhou clan gained 20 casualties. Despite that, Zhou Butong's face did not change. These guards were men that he had hired with money and had no true affiliation with the Zhou clan. So as those guards died, Zhou Badong didn't care at all and continued on. Everyone forward, whoever can injure him, I will reward them with 1,000 purple coins. If you can capture him, then I will offer 10,000 purple coins. Zhou Batong ordered. When there was a hefty reward, there would be brave people. Upon hearing the rich treasure, all the guards' eyes heated up with greed as they charged with no regard for their lives toward Jian Chen. Their saint weapons flew at him one by one in hopes of injuring him instead of capturing him. Jian Chen stared at the incoming saint weapons with a cold glare before his light wind sword exploded into action. With his sword flying about everywhere, in an instant, the light wind sword slammed against each saint weapon far too fast for anyone to see. Ding, 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 ding. Following the dense concentration of saint weapons smashing against each other, a good amount of the saint weapons suddenly broke in half. The moment the guards whose saint weapons broke, had their faces instantly turned pale as they spat out a mouthful of blood and immediately fell to the ground, signifying the death of at least 3 guards. The saint weapons shared a symbiotic relationship with their owners. The moment a saint weapon was injured, their owners would be injured as well. When the saint weapons broke under a serious situation, in the best-case scenario, the person would be unable to cultivate and be left as a cripple. In the worst case, they would die. Those who had their saint weapons snapped in half meant that their saint weapons were completely destroyed. Those who didn't die would wake up and begin their life anew as cripples. However, the allure of the heavy reward offered by Zhou Batong had poisoned the minds of the guards. Even after seeing their comrades fall, they were not frightened in the least. Instead, their ferocity had intensified now that they had less people that could possibly snatch away their prize. After all, it was 1,000 purple coins. For these normal saints and great saints, this was enough for them to live in peace and luxury for their entire lifetime. 1,000 purple coins was something they would never actually be able to earn in their lifetime. The white-robed Jian Chen continued to fly through the group of guards with his light wind sword continuing to flash with each swing. The Zhou clan guards fell to the ground one by one. In the beginning, there had been 100 guards, but after this short amount of time, only half of them remained. The Zhou clan leader Zhou Batong had already retreated away from the fight with a serious face as he observed the one-sided killing which Jian Chen gladly participated in. Clan leader, this man is unbelievably strong and his sword is too fast. It's hard for even us to follow, so these guards simply have no chance to dodge it. If things go on like this, then I'm afraid these guards will soon be completely wiped out. A middle-aged man cried out from behind Zhou Batong. Zhou Batong's eyes flashed with a cold glint as he said, with him using his sword so fast, his saint force will be used up quickly. Since just earlier he destroyed the Zhou mercenaries, there is no way for his saint force to have recovered that fast. Let him first use up his saint force on these guards. I don't believe that his saint force will still have such an endless supply after this. Zhou Lianyun, hurry up and bring the King Tiger squad here. This time the enemy cannot be underestimated, I cannot say for certain, but the life or death of our Zhou clan is on the line. We must act accordingly with all our strength. Yes, clan leader. After being commanded, he immediately dashed to the back of the Zhou clan courtyards. After the brutal massacre of the Zhou clan guards, there was only 10 guards remaining and another 100 or so lying on the ground with their blood pouring out all over the place, staining the marble floors red. Jian Chen's body flickered as he reappeared behind the 10 guards. With the hazy glow of the light wind sword, he slashed through their necks and cleanly destroyed their ability to breathe and live. At this moment, every single guard from the Zhou clan had been completely wiped out. All that remained within the courtyard was Zhou Batong and a dozen members of the clan. Just after Jian Chen had slashed through the throats of the 10 now dead guards, an ear-whistling sound could be heard as a strong gale of wind flew at him from behind. Before the biting cold gale of wind could press against Jian Chen's shoulder, his face grew unnaturally serious before quickly turning around and bringing the light wind sword up to protect himself. Kang! A large sword suddenly fell against Jian Chen's sword, transmitting a large amount of power from sword to sword which pushed Jian Chen back a few steps. Following his backward momentum, Jian Chen's feet allowed himself to fly backward as if to get rid of the excess force driving him back. Ha! A thunderous shout exploded outward as Zhou Batong didn't let Jian Chen have a single second to breathe before sending another sword strike at him. After that, the dozen members from the Zhou clan began to pull out their saint weapons before charging at him as well. Among the group was the relieved and recently fresh Great Saint Master Zhou Yun, the captain of the Zhou mercenaries. Jian Chen didn't bother to hesitate and brought down his light wind sword onto the sword of Zhou Batong with an extremely large amount of sword qi. As the two saint weapons collided in midair, another strong ripple of saint force erupted from the epicenter and flew out in every direction, washing over the grass and the other Zhou clan members. A strike after, the strong amount of saint force had forced Jian Chen to retreat another 6 steps while Zhou Batong flew back 3 steps. Before waiting for Jian Chen to stabilize himself, the dozen Zhou clan members rushed at him with powerful saint force erupting from their saint weapons ready to slash at Jian Chen. Zhou Yun himself dashed behind Jian Chen and with his long spear acting almost as if it was a serpent, striking toward him. Chapter 217. Destruction of the Zhou clan. Jian Chen's foot stomped across the ground and flew off to his side 2 meters with an ungodly speed, dodging the blows of the men waiting for him. These dozen men were fast in their own right. After missing, their hands didn't stop and immediately chased after Jian Chen. Zhou Yun's spear brought about a large amount of saint force that turned it into a white spear of lightning that flew toward Jian Chen's heart. It was a blow that Zhou Yun had put all his strength into. Humph! Jian Chen's mouth curled into a disdainful sneer. Although these dozen men looked to be incomparably ferocious, they were nothing more to Jian Chen than a small amount of pressure that wouldn't even amount to making Jian Chen take them seriously. His hand shook abruptly as the light wind sword stabbed forward with a large amount of sword qi sharpening the sword. In a split second, the light wind sword had lashed out 10 times and bashed against the saint weapons that were coming at him still. Despite the light wind sword looking like a stick in comparison to the dozen saint weapons, the tiny sword that belonged to Jian Chen contained an extraordinarily strong amount of power that the Zhou clan members could not compare to. As soon as the weapons made contact with each other, the Zhou clan members' saint weapons were forced away. The faces of the Zhou clan members suddenly went slack as they looked at the light wind sword in surprise. They hadn't thought that such a small sword would be able to contain so much power. The very moment both sides made contact, their saint weapons had actually transmitted enough force from the blow to paralyze their arms momentarily. Even as the men were in their shocked states, a white glow surrounded the light wind sword as it flew at an unbelievably fast speed before streaking across the necks of the Zhou clan members before they could even react. The dozen Zhou clan members immediately went rigid as their necks suddenly sprayed blood from their wounds. The amount of blood that poured out of their necks had then become a fountain that took away the very life that sustained their bodies. Among the group, aside from the great Saint Master Zhou Yun who had narrowly escaped death, the other dozen members had their throats slashed apart by Jian Chen's light wind sword. A single strike had killed a dozen men. Jian Chen didn't cease his actions there. With another flicker of his body, he immediately leaped at Zhou Yun to strike. Seeing Jian Chen come rushing at him, Zhou Yun immediately went pale with fright. After exchanging blows with Jian Chen once, he already understood that he wasn't an opponent that could fight Jian Chen and would be unable to survive against him for long. Zhou Yun simply wasn't a match for Jian Chen alone, and so he immediately exploded backward in an attempt to retreat. "Brat, Zhou Badong will definitely make sure you won't leave here alive." Another shout exploded toward Jian Chen as the wrathful Zhou Badong immediately flew in from the side in order to protect the escaping Zhou Yun. Right now, Zhou Butong's eyes were crimson with anger. The previous dozen Zhou clan members who had died were important members of the Zhou clan and served as the backbone of it. To the Zhou clan, they were what supported the clan, and each one had the strength of a saint master at the least. Each one of them had a mind full of business and practically controlled the Zhou clan in its financial affairs. Now that the pillars of the Zhou clan had been killed, this was a disastrous loss for the Zhou clan. Jian Chen snorted. "Your Zhou clan had the chance to not get involved, but you insisted so much on being a part of this. The Zhou clan are all but gone now. If you wish to kill me, you simply have no chance now." With that, Jian Chen didn't wait a second longer and immediately brought down the light wind sword to strike at Zhou Badong. At that moment, a group of heavily armored men suddenly burst into the Zhou clan courtyards. This group of people had only 20 people around. Each member seemed to be disciplined as if they were born to serve the military. Even as they rushed toward Jian Chen, each step they made had been unanimous. "Clan leader, the King Tiger Squad has arrived." A middle-aged man cried out to Zhou Badong from the back of the group. Hearing that, Zhou Budong's eyes shook as he fiercely stabbed at Jian Chen once more with his great sword before looking at the group of 20. "King Tiger Squad, hear me. I want you to kill this brat immediately." The King Tiger Squad was the result of 30 years' worth of training and expenses from the Zhou clan. From a total amount of 300 people, each one of them had been embroiled in a series of close combat examinations before leaving behind only 20 men. These 20 men were the King Tiger Squad and had the strongest of the Zhou clan in it. "Yes!" The 20 members of the King Tiger Squad instantly cried out an answer and charged straight at Jian Chen with their saint weapons at a blinding speed. Sensing the strong amount of qi radiating from the King Tiger Squad, Jian Chen felt a little bit of shock in his heart. Each and every single one of these 20 members were at the very least as strong as a saint master. This must be the Zhou clan's trump card, Jian Chen thought to himself. Just as he thought about that, the King Tiger Squad had already reached 100 meters within range of Jian Chen with their saint weapons outstretched. At the same time, Zhou Badong and Zhou Yun both flew at Jian Chen to strike simultaneously. Jian Chen moved back a few steps in order to avoid Zhou Badong and Zhou Yun's strike. The light wind sword disappeared in a silver blur as it slid by the saint weapons of the King Tiger Squad and flew at the throats of a few of their members. Following the traces of the light wind sword, it flew toward the King Tiger Squad in a silver blur and slid across their throats, taking away their lives. In a flash, the 20 men from the King Tiger Squad had been completely wiped out by Jian Chen. Seeing how quickly the King Tiger Squad was killed, Zhou Badong began to tremble furiously as his wrath grew to unprecedented levels. The King Tiger Squad was an especially precious treasure to him, and were the elite task force that he had poured countless hours of training into. As Zhou Badong continued to think about this newest development, the sound of Jian Chen's light wind sword emitted a bright glow of light that screeched at him as it stabbed toward his throat. Zhou Badong immediately lifted his sword to block the thrust of the light wind sword, but as the two made contact, the force from the light wind sword caused him to move a few steps back. Jian Chen didn't give Zhou Badong any time to relax and immediately drew closer to him. His sword moved inexplicably fast as it lashed out once more. After that, the third and fourth strike had struck out simultaneously with a speed that rivaled the first two strikes. The fifth strike. The light wind sword disappeared within a blur of light as the phantom traces of the blade overlapped with its real body. This one strike was unbelievably fast, giving Zhou Badong no time to react. PC. Zhou Butong's eyes could only widen as the light wind sword surpassed what he could react against and pierced through his throat. Chapter 218. The city lord Zhou Batong looked at the bloody light wind sword that had been stabbed through his throat with a look of utter disbelief. He didn't possibly think that a 20-year-old youth would be able to kill him so easily. Right now, Zhou Batong couldn't believe how strong he was. He thought he was in a dream. The events that had occurred in this hour had developed far too fast for him to take in. Just earlier, he had been the leader of the high and mighty Zhou clan discussing the matters of a magical beast wave with the Wake City Defensive Guard commander. But now, not even half an hour after that, his Zhou clan had been completely destroyed. Zhou Batong heaved a heavy sigh in unwillingness before closing his eyes and allowing his elderly body to hit the ground slowly. Jian Chen stared at Zhou Batong's fall to the ground coldly without any emotion. Thanks to the memories of his previous incarnation, his determination had been rather resolute. Even if he were to massacre many people, he wouldn't be affected too much. Slowly, the light wind sword was pulled out from Zhou Batong's neck as Jian Chen turned to look for Zhou Yun. However, his face darkened as he looked at the bodies that littered the floors of the courtyard. Yet Zhou Yun was nowhere to be found. At this, Jian Chen's eyes narrowed, so he ran away. As he spoke, Jian Chen looked at the dead bodies on the floor before finally looking at the space belt on Zhou Batong's waist. With 2 steps forward, Jian Chen had grabbed at the space belt. Zhou Batong was the leader of a clan after all. The items within his possession would surely be expensive. Just outside the corner of Jian Chen's eye, he noticed a single thread on Zhou Batong's neck. Hidden by the blood and cloth of Zhou Batong, Jian Chen had then finally found the secret the corpse was hiding. This hidden string was almost invisible to the naked eye. It had only been revealed after the blood dyed the string a shiny red, allowing Jian Chen to discover it. Jian Chen slowly parted the cloth away from Zhou Batong's bloody neck to reveal a ring tied to a piece of string that led down to his stomach. The moment Jian Chen found the space ring, his eyes began to sparkle as he cried out in surprise, "This is a space ring." There was a large amount of happiness in his voice. This space ring had been personally hidden and worn by Zhou Batong. With such a secret, there would definitely be a hidden treasure within this. Pulling at the hidden space ring away from Zhou Batong's neck, Jian Chen was exceptionally happy. Although he hadn't yet looked at the items within, he stored it within his own space ring. He didn't have time to look at it for now, so he immediately rushed out of the courtyards. The moment Jian Chen had exited the courtyards, he immediately heard the sound of voices of a few men who had heard the fight take place in the courtyards. Everyone's faces were full of shock as they looked at the Zhou courtyard. Their unwavering gazes stared at the horrifying view, as if they couldn't believe what had just happened. The Zhou clan had been completely destroyed in an instant. Out of the way, out of the way. Everyone get out of the way. At this moment, an extremely loud sound cried out from behind the group. The dense group of people standing near the Zhou clan courtyards immediately saw a group of heavily armored men with weapons who were running straight through them. Isn't that the city lord of Wake City? I didn't think he would come here as well. From the midst of everyone, a group of heavily armored men walked forward. One man in particular wearing a black robe stood tall. His eyes shined with a purpose as sharp as his sword. From the perspective of a regular person, the man's skin resembled that of copper, and combined with his stature, the man looked rather intimidating. This was the city lord of Wake City, Yun Li. Under the protection of the city guards, the city lord of Wake City, Yun Li continued to walk into the Zhou clan courtyards. Stepping through the gates, he could only see the large amount of bodies littered about. Yun Li walked forward a few more steps before coming to a stop as he looked at the corpses with a heavy expression. Finally, his eyes landed upon the dead body of Zhou Batong before his face became like stone. "AI!" Yun Li cried out as he closed his eyes sadly. Standing right next to him was the commander of Wake City's defensive guards, Duo Li, sighing. Duo Li couldn't believe what he was seeing before speaking out with a dejected tone. "Lord, we came a moment too late." At this, Yun Li once more opened his eyes as he stared at the multiple bodies strewn across the ground. Finally suppressing the sadness within his heart, he only then realized that every single man had a wound on their throats. It was only just that one wound, and Zhou Batong was no exception either. Duo Li, the one that came here to declare revenge on the Zhou clan, was a single 20-year-old youth, correct? Yun Li stared at Commander Duo Li with a cold face. "Yes, my lord." From his appearances, his age was estimated to be around 20 years old, an exceptionally young face. Duo Li spoke out frantically. Hearing this, Yun Li went silent as he began to think. So the Zhou clan has been destroyed. This has weakened our defensive troops for the magical beast wave by a large amount. Yet with this young expert in our Wake City, if we can rope him in, we will be able to defend ourselves against the magical beasts with ease. The Lord is quite wise. Your subordinate here thought of the same thing. Duoli spoke out with a serious expression. Come, he hasn't gone too far yet. Let us chase after him. Yunli began to walk even faster as he led Duoli and the group of guards out of the courtyard. Afterward, Yunli began to chase after the bloody footprints Jian Chen had left behind. Jian Chen slowly walked through the streets with furrowed eyebrows as he thought to himself. He had no idea how he would find Uncle Kendall's family. Wake City wasn't too small, but there was still a few 100,000 people. Just finding 2 people within a population like that was no simple task. Plus, right now Jian Chen couldn't even guarantee that Uncle Kendall's family was still living in Wake City, or if they had moved out of the city. To try and find the family would be like finding a needle in a haystack. Uncle Kendall, don't worry. No matter what, I will find your family and take care of them. I will definitely let them live happily for their entire lives. Jian Chen muttered to himself. However, before he could fully commit himself to finding Kendall's family, he first had to deal with the Tianxiong clan. In the beginning, Jian Chen had been forced to run away from Wake City thanks to the Tianxiong clan. This grudge he had for them could be said to be extremely deep and was unforgettable. He also knew that because he had killed Tianxiong Lai's son, Tianxiong Kong, their grudge against him was equally deep. This had gone far beyond what could be solved with words. One side would have to be wiped out. If he didn't deal with the Tianxiong clan, then Jian Chen wouldn't dare to try to find news about Uncle Kendall's family. Otherwise, in case the Tianxiong clan found out there was a connection between him and Kendall's family, then they would try to place him in a trap that would be inescapable and unavoidable. Chapter 219. Invitation of the City Lord. Fellow brother, please wait a moment. As Jian Chen continued walking, a sound suddenly rang out from behind, accompanied by the sounds of heavy footsteps. Jian Chen's eyes furrowed together as he turned his head, only to see a squad of heavily armored soldiers running at him quickly with 2 middle-aged men leading the squad. He looked at the armored pair of men with a suspicious look. Although he realized one of them was the man he saw not too long ago, the commander of Wake City's defensive troops, Duo Li. Seeing these troops from Wake City approach him, Jian Chen couldn't help but feel suspicious. He had no idea if these men were here for the sole purpose of capturing him for his eradication of the Zhou clan. Yet while Jian Chen didn't fear these men, he wanted to find Uncle Kendall's family within Wake City. It was for this reason that he wasn't yet willing to fight with the local ruler of Wake City. Fellow brother, please wait. Seeing Jian Chen slow down, Duo Li called out to him once more as he urged his group to go faster. Jian Chen looked at Duo Li and his group of men next to him before asking Duo Li, Commander Duo Li, is there a problem? Commander Duo Li revealed a cordial smile as he gave a salute to Jian Chen. Fellow brother, this is the Lord of Wake City. He pointed to the middle-aged man next to him. The leader of Wake City. Jian Chen was a bit startled. Immediately looking at the Lord, he cupped his hands together. So you are the Lord of Wake City, this one is Jian Chen, excuse this one for his lack of knowledge. When the city lord had first heard that Jian Chen was a 20-year-old that had reached the Great Saint Master level, he originally thought that Jian Chen was from a clan with a strong background. At this moment, he saw neither the rich robes or the air of arrogance, making his impression of Jian Chen neither good nor bad. The Lord of Wake City cupped his hands together. So you are called Jian Chen. This one is called Yunli, brother Jian Chen. If it's not too much to ask, just call me elder brother Yunli instead of Lord if that can be avoided. Seeing Jian Chen's calm face, Yunli could ascertain that whether it was his expression or the strange attitude of Jian Chen, he was no ordinary person. Despite the fact that Jian Chen was wearing mediocre quality clothing, the city lord didn't look down on Jian Chen at all. Instead, he had actually admired him for a moment. Hearing the words of Yunli, Jian Chen understood that he was trying to make friends with him. However, he still didn't dare to lower his guard, since with Yunli's strength, he couldn't afford to treat him as nothing. What might Lord Yunli want to do with this one? Jian Chen spoke with a smile and a calm tone. Laughing, Yunli said, Brother Jian Chen, talking on this street is rather inconvenient. Would you mind coming with me back to my mansion? Upon hearing those words, Jian Chen's heart beat wildly as he suddenly thought about his problem with Uncle Kendall's family. Without any hesitation he complied with the Lord. The mansion of the city lord was located within the heart of Wake City, and was the most magnificent of buildings in the city. It was built over several square kilometers and was also the largest building. Even the mercenary union couldn't compare in size to the mansion. Around the building, many squads of men constantly patrolled around it day and night without any corner unsearched, making this building a heavily guarded area. Within the mansion's main hall, the city lord Yunli had even given up his usual seat at the throne to instead lower himself to the status of Jian Chen and sat on the same level as Jian Chen. As they waited, a few female waitresses began to serve them by occasionally serving them a cup of tea. The two began to chat with each other for a while before finally getting down to the main problem. Brother Jian Chen, I'm sure you realize that our Wake City is about to face off against a wave of magical beasts. This is a test of life or death for our Wake City. In the case that we fail to defend Wake City from these magical beasts, then the tens of thousands of people will become the meal of the magical beasts, so I sincerely hope that Brother Jian Chen will lend his power to help defend Wake City. Yun Li's smile had faded from his face and a serious look replaced it as he began to talk about this serious topic. Jian Chen laughed. The city lord truly thinks too highly of this one. I am one who walks the path of solitude. What reason would I have to protect the population of Wake City from this wave of magical beasts? At Jian Chen's words, Yun Li's face tightened as he realized Jian Chen had no plans on protecting Wake City from the wave of magical beasts. Before he could say something, Jian Chen continued to speak. However, since I'm already at Wake City, I may as well participate. Yet, whether or not Wake City survives the magical beast wave, this one cannot guarantee that. Jian Chen's words made Yun Li's eyes widen immediately as he smiled joyously. Just hearing these words from Brother Jian Chen makes this one feel at ease. When Brother Jian Chen joins Wake City, then our city will definitely be safe from this danger once more. At this moment, Commander Duo Li suddenly burst through the doors and quickly walked toward Yun Li. Giving a complicated look at Jian Chen, he bent down to whisper something into Yun Li's ears. Seeing how the Lord of Wake City Yun Li's face grow even more serious before a look of massive confusion overtook his face, Jian Chen had a complicated look on his face as well. After seeing how the gradual change in Yun Li's face, Jian Chen began to feel curious. Although he didn't know what words had been said to elicit such a massive change, Jian Chen could begin to guess at an idea or two of what the situation might be after Yun Li and Duo Li had stared at him. Suddenly, Jian Chen's eyes flashed as he thought to himself, could it be a matter regarding to the Tianqiong clan? Jian Chen's enemies within Wake City were very few, but after seeing Yun Li's face grew extremely serious, there could only be one other answer after the Zhou clan and Zhou mercenaries were ruled out. Tianqiong Lai from the Tianqiong clan knew of his name, and after Jian Chen had killed his son Tianqiong Kong, there was a grudge that could never be resolved peacefully. Chapter 220. Destruction of the Tianqiong clan, 1. Yun Li's face began to darken as Duo Li continued to speak into his ear non-stop with an even grimmer expression. After Commander Duo Li had finished talking, Yun Li turned back to Jian Chen with a bewildered expression, yet he did not leave. Yun Li furrowed his eyebrows together as he continued to look at Jian Chen. With a moment's hesitation, he finally spoke, Brother Jian Chen. 1 year ago in Wake City a major event took place. The number 1 clan in Wake City, the Tianqiong clan, had their young lord Tianqiong Kong killed by someone. And if this piece of information is reliable, then the person who killed Tianqiong Kong is a youth that isn't too far apart in age with you. Most importantly, this youth's name is also Jian Chen. Surely that means the two of you are the same person. Hearing this, Jian Chen's facial expressions didn't change at all. This type of end result was something he should have anticipated long ago. Without any other words, he smiled. The Lord is correct, that person is this one. Although he had long since guessed that this answer was coming, Yun Li still couldn't help but feel his heart rate speed up after hearing Jian Chen's answer. Although this matter regarding Jian Chen and the Tianqiong clan was completely unrelated to this magical beast wave, this was still a crucial moment where the lives of tens of thousands of citizens were at stake. This wasn't a time for them to be sloppy. The entire defense force had to be one cohesive unit in order to help defend Wake City. Whether it was Jian Chen or the Tianqiong clan, they were still one of the bigger powers of Wake City. With this hatred between the two of them, it would bring about a huge headache for Yun Li since he knew that the two were like fire if put together. He was afraid that if they were to get too close to each other, then there would definitely be huge losses for everyone. If this was any other time, Yun Li wouldn't have cared, but at this moment where a wave of magical beasts would be coming soon, he definitely wanted to avoid the explosion that would happen in between them. At the very least, until the magical beast wave was over, he could not let Wake City lose any more power. Yunli looked at Jian Chen seriously. Brother Jian Chen. Even I have heard about the grudge between you and the Tianxiong clan, and while I myself would like to stay out of it, Wake City is in a moment of crisis at the moment. We need to protect this city, so I would hope that you and the Tianxiong clan can put aside your differences temporarily until the wave is over. Would Brother Jian Chen agree to this? Yunli spoke courteously. Since he had placed Jian Chen in a high position now, he wouldn't dare try to belittle him whether or not he had the support of a clan. Jian Chen shook his head as his eyes narrowed. Lord Yunli, I'm afraid my answer will disappoint you. Hearing this, Yunli's face dropped slightly. His heart knew that answer was coming, yet he still wasn't willing to let the question drop. With a heavy heart he asked once more, Brother Jian Chen, please pay attention to the current situation. Furthermore, the Tianxiong clan is even stronger than the Zhou clan. Despite the calamity they faced a year ago and losing the #1 clan title in Wake City, they remained strong-willed. No matter how much they lost, the Tianxiong clan still is one of the strongest clans and are not to be belittled. Jian Chen's heart shook for a moment after listening to Yunli. Lord Yunli. Aside from Tianxiong Lai, what other experts does the Tianxiong clan have? Yunli hesitated for a moment before saying, aside from Tianxiong Lai, there is another middle great saint master expert who is the younger brother of Tianxiong Lai. His name is Tianxiong Daoyun. Other than that, Tianxiong Lai has a few connections with some of the captains of the stronger mercenary groups. If they were to unite, then their power would be extraordinarily terrifying. After finding out this piece of information, Jian Chen's face still didn't make a change in expression. He simply had the same reaction as before while he sipped his cup of tea. Seeing how calm Jian Chen was as if he didn't care at all for the Tianxiong clan, Yunli's inner thoughts were finally decided. He was afraid that Jian Chen had an extremely strong background supporting him, but that couldn't be said for sure. He wasn't even sure if a high-leveled expert was protecting him either. Yunli was a meticulous person. The moment he saw that Jian Chen didn't have any plans of letting the Tianxiong clan go, he didn't plan on trying to convince Jian Chen anymore. To him now, Jian Chen was worth far more than the Tianxiong clan was. Even if Jian Chen had no background to support him, for a youth like him to be able to kill a great saint master, this was a talent that transcended the heavens. With some time, his achievements throughout the Tianyuan continent would be known to all. After Jian Chen left the mansion, the sky had already turned dark. While he was still in the mansion, Jian Chen didn't ask about Uncle Kendall's family. In his opinion, that matter would be best done when the matter between him and the Tianxiong clan was finished. This was the best and safest way to find out about Kendall's family. The day was already all but gone, and Jian Chen had already fought in 2 different battles. This had led to a huge decrease in his energy, so now was not the time Jian Chen wanted to fight against the Tianxiong clan. Instead, he began to look for a restaurant and inn to stay for the night. Time quickly flew by as morning came. Jian Chen opened his eyes from his sitting cultivation position. All of the energy he had used up yesterday had been completely recovered, making him able to operate at his peak condition once more. After Jian Chen left the inn, he listened to the random discussions of the people outside regarding the total annihilation of both the Zhou mercenaries and Zhou clan. The Zhou clan and Zhou mercenaries had very strong reputations within Wake City, but for them to both be exterminated in such a short amount of time, this news had quickly spread throughout the city like wildfire. No matter if it was a small or large street, every person was talking about it. At the same time, every single major power within Wake City had immediately set out to scout for information the moment they heard about this. The Tianxiong clan used to be the #1 power in Wake City, and their might was known to everyone. No matter where he went, Jian Chen would be able to hear about the Tianxiong clan. Chapter 221. Destruction of the Tianxiong clan, 2. The Tianxiong clan was positioned in the northern part of the city. Just past the large halls of the Tianxiong courtyards, the Tianxiong clan's leader Tianxiong Lai sat upon his throne with 2 people by his side. Both of them were young, but their presence was unusual and their eyes flickered with an unusual light, making others feel that these 2 were not like common people. A year ago, even though the Tianxiong clan had suffered a tremendous loss from Jian Chen and were no longer the #1 clan in the eyes of Wake City, everyone still understood that the Tianxiong clan's peak experts had not weakened at all. In terms of martial prowess, they still maintained the spot of the #1 clan. The main reason was because of Tianxiong Lai. Although he had stopped at the middle great saint master level, he had an earth-attributed saint force which granted him superiority over others. Even those at the peak Great Saint Master level wouldn't be able to contend against Tianqiong Lai. However, in terms of controlling Wake City, the Tianqiong clan was no longer in power like it used to be. That was because Tianqiong Kang's death had brought a great amount of pain to Tianqiong Lai. Because of that, he didn't pay enough attention to the control his Tianqiong clan had over Wake City. Therefore their power declined despite having enough martial power to maintain it. Tianqiong Lai himself had changed drastically during this year as well. His entire body grew thin and even his hair became gray. Tianqiong Lai had a smile on his face as he looked at the men in front of him. There was a lively look to their faces, and if anyone were to recognize them, they would be so surprised that their jaws would drop. That was because these people were the very well-known figures and captains of the larger mercenary groups in Wake City. Each one of them represented a different mercenary group and were very strong men in their own rights. Each mercenary group had a number of over 100 people with a strength that was not like most groups. Among the group in front of him, there were even 2 elders who held 2 different clans with large amounts of political power. These groups of men could even be said to hold an incredible amount of power within Wake City. It was only when something major was about to happen that they would all convene together. Otherwise it would be very hard for everyone to meet up. Thus anyone that saw this sight would be astonished. Fellow brothers, I've invited everyone here today for their assistance in helping me kill a person. Tianqiong Lai spoke out to the representatives of each mercenary group with a loud voice. Haha, Tianqiong Lai, we've been friends for over a dozen years now. Whatever it is you need help with, then all you need is to ask. As long as I have the power, I will do it. After Tianqiong Lai had spoken, a sturdy-looking middle-aged man had answered him. That's right, Tianqiong Lai. With our friendship, whatever it is you need help with you just have to ask. You don't have to beat around the bush like a virgin on her wedding night. Spoke a dark-tanned man. He wore short pants, revealing bulges of muscle on his legs. From the looks of it, those legs looked as if they were capable of bending a steel plate in half with a simple kick. After that, the entire group of men began to call out their agreement to helping out Tianqiong Lai. After hearing this, Tianqiong Lai had a faint smile on his face as he sat there. Almost if he had remembered something, the smile on his face quickly receded. In a circle of emotions, Tianqiong Lai suddenly had a painful expression. Fellow brothers, do you still remember when my son Tianqiong Kong was killed a year ago? Hearing that, everyone looked at each other with a solemn face. However, no one spoke out. It was as if they were waiting for Tianqiong Lai to say something. Tianqiong Lai continued to speak. A year ago, a single youth entered Wake City and murdered my son Tianqiong Kong. Not only that, but he dealt a serious blow to my Tianqiong clan, and despite me personally chasing after him, it was to no avail due to his cunningness. Using the terrain of the magical Beast Mountain range to ambush and kill the experts of my Tianqiong clan, in the end, he finally escaped from my grasp. Tianqiong Lai's face began to grow more and more wrathful as he talked. He despised Jian Chen down to the bone because not only did Jian Chen kill his son Tianqiong Kong, but he had even played around with Tianqiong Lai while in the magical Beast Mountain range. To him, this was a personal disgrace. He had never been beaten to such a miserable degree by anyone of a lower level of strength like this before. Tianqiong Lai, could it be the murderer of your son has returned to Wake City once more? The dark-skinned person from before spoke out once more. Tianqiong Lai nodded his head slightly. Surely everyone has heard about the major event yesterday. Not only was the Zhou mercenaries eradicated, but the Zhou clan itself was destroyed in a single day. However, after a small investigation, the man who destroyed both the Zhou clan and Zhou mercenaries was a 20-year-old youth named Jian Chen. Everyone's face immediately hardened like stone the moment they heard that final sentence, along with a mixture of extreme shock. They had already heard about the massacre of the Zhou clan, but they hadn't known as much about the matter as Tianqiong Lai. What surprised them the most was that the person who had destroyed both groups in a single day was merely a 20-year-old youth. This was all but inconceivable to them. Immediately the whole group went quiet as they processed this piece of information. After a while, an elder broke the silence. Tianqiong Lai, this Jian Chen who destroyed the Zhou clan, he surely must not be weak at all. Tianqiong Lai shook his head slightly with furrowed eyebrows. I fought against him a year ago and understood his strength quite well. At the most, he was nothing more than a saint master and wasn't even able of handling a single blow from me. Yet, he was also extremely fast, so that even as I chased him I had to use quite a large amount of energy. Because of this he escaped from me. Furthermore, his sword strokes were extremely fast as well. Anyone on his level of strength would simply not have enough time to react, and in that moment, he was able to kill the Saint Masters of my clan in the Magical Beast Mountain range. Although this was a year ago, even if he was able to improve his strength, there must be a limit. Even a genius with an outstanding potential would not be able to make a breakthrough from a Saint Master to the peak Great Saint Master or Earth Saint Master in the span of a single year. So it is my guess that he had some help with eradicating the Zhou clan. Tian Xiong, do you mean to ask if you want our help to capture the assassin who killed your son? A regular-looking man asked. I've invited everyone here today not to help capture him, but to help block him if he tries to escape once more. I do not wish for him to slip away from my grasp again, and if he truly does dare to appear within Wake City, then I, Tian Xiong, swear that he will not leave the city alive. Tian Xiong pledged. As he spoke, his tone gradually grew colder and colder as his eyes began to spark with a killing intent. Chapter 222. Destruction of the Tianxiong clan, 3. While the group of people within the hall conversed with each other, a 20-year-old youth wearing a white robe walked to the Tianxiong clan's gates. He was rather handsome with a face that could only be described as perfect. Adding his natural charm to his personality, he could definitely not be considered someone of normal status. This youth was Jian Chen. Seeing the main halls, Jian Chen's eyes sparked with a huge desire to kill. The memory of when he had first been chased by Tian Xiong out of Wake City was still quite clear in his mind. Jian Chen was normally not a man who would thought narrow-mindedly, but against the Tianxiong clan, he would not let them go. Return kindness with kindness and return animosity with animosity. If there was a trickle of kindness, return it with a gushing spring of kindness. If the hatred was carved deep within the bones, then return the favor 100 times back. This was the personal motto that Jian Chen had carried with him from his time as a hermit in his past world. Even today, Jian Chen had not changed his style of thought. The courtyard of the Tianxiong clan was rather simple with gates that were tall and remained open without a problem. Upon looking in, one could see 8 sturdy and resilient men who would return the stairs with a bright eye. Jian Chen slowed down his pace as he calmly walked toward the open courtyard as if he was taking a walk. In fact, just looking at him would seem as if he hadn't a single amount of hostility. The 8 guards at the gates realized Jian Chen was coming toward them, so the moment he approached, 2 men blocked the path and called out to him. Halt! What matters might you have here? Staring at the 2 men in front of him, Jian Chen finally revealed a cold smile. I've come to kill you all. The guards all stared blankly at him as they processed his answer. While thinking about what he had just said with a loosened guard, there was suddenly a bright flash of light as Jian Chen's light wind sword suddenly struck out at the guards. Immediately, the tip of the sword had pierced through each one of their throats. Jian Chen's attack had been too sudden, and for these guards who only possessed the strength of a great saint, they weren't even able to pull out their saint weapons. So in a blink of an eye, these 8 guards were killed without trouble. After killing these people, Jian Chen continued forward past the threshold into the courtyards where a group of members were at. Who are you? Stop right there. The moment Jian Chen entered the courtyard, a large explosion of sounds rang out around him as the shadows of 2 men suddenly flew at Jian Chen from not too far away. Jian Chen laughed to himself. It is no wonder the Tianxiong clan used to be the #1 clan. Who would have thought that right next to the courtyard gates there would be 2 Saint Masters waiting to ambush someone? The speed these Saint Masters were traveling at was extremely fast. In the moment Jian Chen was thinking to himself, they had already arrived at Jian Chen's side and brought out their swords in preparation to fight against him. A strong amount of Saint force accompanied their swords as they swung out at Jian Chen. These 2 Saint Masters had been guarding the gates from the inside, and the moment they saw Jian Chen cross into the courtyard, they sprung into action. Since they could see the dead bodies of the 8 guards, they knew Jian Chen was not a weak foe and spared no words before engagement. The saint weapons flew within half a meter away from Jian Chen when the light wind sword immediately reappeared within Jian Chen's hands. With a silver arc of light, the light wind sword flew out at the 2 swords with an inconceivable speed. Before the 2 saint weapons could even get within 3 inches of Jian Chen, he had already speared the throats of the 2 saint masters. After that, Jian Chen's body flickered as he reappeared 3 steps away from his original position to avoid the 2 saint weapons that continued to fall down from inertia. Because it was currently morning, the Tianxiong clan's courtyard had plenty of people doing their morning exercises. Some members were even patrolling around, but the moment they had seen Jian Chen kill the 2 saint masters, they had naturally stopped where they were and cried out a warning. An assassin is here. Someone's causing a disturbance. An enemy is at our gates. Everyone prepare yourself. The previously quiet Tianqiong clan had erupted into a cacophony of sounds as the panicked shouts of everyone rang through the air. Practically everyone with confidence flew at Jian Chen while everyone else immediately ran back into the halls to warn the leader of the Tianqiong clan, Tianqiong Lai. Seeing the group of people instantly break apart, Jian Chen's previously impassive face grew colder as he sneered. Soon after, the light wind sword swung into motion to meet with his enemies head-on. Following the bright silver glow of light, the men who brandished their saint weapons were instantly killed by Jian Chen's sword. Jian Chen had an absolute determination to kill anyone in the Tianqiong clan, so he didn't dare let any one of them escape. As the shouts and cries grew louder, more and more people from the Tianqiong clan were startled awake, and they all began to run toward the origin of the sound. Although the clan had fallen a bit the past year, it had originally been Wake City's #1 clan, so one couldn't underestimate the clan's strength. The amount of people in the courtyard alone was quite large. As more and more people rushed over, Jian Chen gradually became surrounded. Within the main halls of the Tianqiong clan, Tianqiong Lai was consulting with a few captains of the mercenary groups, but the moment he had heard the sounds of battle outside, his eyebrows furrowed together in confusion. Even the mercenary captains all looked at each other with doubt and puzzlement as they tried to think of what could be happening. What's happening outside? Why is there so much noise? Tianqiong Lai cried out in complaint to those around him. Clan leader, there is a man who's causing trouble with our Tianqiong clan. Without warning, he has already killed 10 of our guards. A man hurriedly cried out as he came running into the halls. Tianqiong Lai's eyes grew furious as he thundered, "What? So someone dared to cause trouble for our Tianqiong clan?" "Yes, my lord. That man is extremely strong, and even the 2 Saint Master Guards were killed by him." The man replied. "Humph." Tianqiong Lai's eyes radiated a hateful aura as he spat out. "He truly is too impatient for death to cause such a commotion within our Tianqiong clan. Let me see what kind of person he truly is." Chapter 223, Destruction of the Tianqiong Clan, 4. As the cries of battle and death rang out in the courtyard, practically over 100 people had already gathered there and blockaded the area so tight that even water wouldn't be able to get through. The white-robed Jian Chen clenched his light wind sword as he continued to weave through the group of people. With each movement he made, he killed yet another member of the Tianqiong clan. The silver light of his sword never ceased to stop flashing as each sword stroke he made slammed straight through the throat of each person and claimed their life. His movements were like water, and even after being surrounded by a group of 100 people, his face remained as calm as ever. "Halt!" Suddenly, a loud shout cried out, causing the group of guards to immediately fall back with their eyes still staring at Jian Chen vigilantly. Tianqiong Lai flew toward the courtyard with a group of men right behind him. These men were the same ones who had just been talking with him in the main hall. Each one of them represented a different faction of the variety of power within Wake City. Tianqiong Lai entered the ring of people within the courtyard with a serious expression. When he noticed several dead members of the gods, his face took on a darker shade of color. In a brief moment, his eyes landed upon Jian Chen and promptly froze. The moment he had seen Jian Chen, his face began to tremble before emitting a large amount of killing intent from his eyes. He was looking at Jian Chen as if he were a dangerous animal. "You're Jian Chen." Tianqiong Lai spat out each word angrily despite the relatively calm expression on his face. Although in his eyes, the slightest tint of red could be seen. Jian Chen smiled. "Leader of the Tianqiong clan, I didn't think you would still remember me." Tianqiong Lai's entire body was shaking now. Right in front of him was the murderer of his son Tianqiong Kong. How could he ever forget about him? Even in his dreams every night, he would constantly be reminded of Jian Chen's existence despite seeing him a small number of times a year ago. Yet at the same time, Jian Chen's face was forever burned into the very depths of Tianqiong Lai's mind so that he would never be able to forget it. "Jian Chen, this old man was prepared to look for you, but I didn't think that you'd take the initiative to come knocking at my door. Since it's like this, you should be prepared to never set foot out of this place alive." Tianqiong Lai spat as his eyes looked at him with a great deal of animosity. With a smile of disdain, Jian Chen said, "Tianqiong Lai, you couldn't prevent me from escaping a year ago. And here we are 1 year later with you saying that you will. With just your tiny Tianqiong clan, you don't have the qualifications to do that." Tianqiong Lai's eyes flashed dangerously at that. When the Saint Master level Jian Chen had escaped from him after all he had caused, it had left an unwashable stain on his honor. However, what Tian Xiong didn't know was that at the time, Jian Chen was merely a peak-level great saint with a good amount of distance from the Saint Master realm. Brat, today I will see just how much you've changed since a year ago. Guards, block off his escape routes. A yellow glow began to flow down Tian Xiong's arm as he quickly grasped the newly formed battle axe and flew quickly toward Jian Chen to fight. Ha! With a single roar, Tian Xiong raised his battle axe into the air and with a deafening shout, he swung it down toward Jian Chen. A cold sneer appeared on Jian Chen's face. 1 year ago, this thunderous strike of Tian Xiong would have forced Jian Chen to dodge instead of block, but now the situation was different. A faint glow began to appear around Jian Chen's sword as he lifted it up to block against Tian Xiong's weapon without any fear. Seeing how Jian Chen wasn't trying to evade his strike, Tian Xiong's eyes flashed strangely. He thought Jian Chen was stupid to not try to dodge. When he fought against him a year ago, he could clearly tell that Jian Chen was overwhelmed by him. Today, he wouldn't ever have believed that Jian Chen's strength had increased to such a devastating degree. With a screeching sound, the battle axe clashed against the light wind sword in an attempt to shatter it with his saint force. Ding! The two weapons clashed against each other with a loud bang as the saint force within the weapons repulsed each other and scattered out in massive ripples of energy visible to the naked eye. Upon reaching the stone floors below, they instantly cracked and split as if made of tofu with a series of cobweb-like cracks spreading everywhere. After the weapons had slammed against each other, Tian Xiong's eyes widened as he looked at Jian Chen in disbelief. Reflected deep within his eyes, fear began to surface. From that one exchange, Tian Xiong had a better understanding of Jian Chen's strength. The Jian Chen now had a strength that was completely different compared to a year ago. Back then, if Jian Chen wasn't so fast, he wouldn't have been able to constantly evade him and would have died like an ant underneath Tian Xiong's foot. But now, the previously weak ant had grown to become a mighty dragon that could fight against him on an equal level. That fact sent Tian Xiong reeling with disbelief. In fact, Tian Xiong felt that this Jian Chen in front of him and the Jian Chen from the past were two completely different people. The difference between the two was just too great. Jian Chen staggered back a few steps. Although he was able to defend himself against Tian Xiong's strike, he still wasn't completely matched in pure strength. Although Tian Xiong was a middle great saint master and had a strength that was greater than Jian Chen's by a certain amount, it was his mastery of the earth-attributed saint force that actually granted him an overwhelming superiority. Even peak great saint masters weren't much stronger than him in terms of fighting strength. Jian Chen was clearly the weaker one in this collision of attacks. In contrast, Tian Xiong still stood where he had been before. However, his legs had now sunk deeper into the ground by a single inch. Brat, I didn't think that your strength would be so vastly different in the time span of a single year. Tian Xiong stared darkly at Jian Chen. However, even with this major change, you will still not make it out alive. With that, he flew at Jian Chen once more. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.